I was 16 when my father died, and just like that, my entire world crumbled like a dry leaf in autumn. Dad wasn't just a parent, he was the compass that kept me grounded. The man had receipts from 2009 filed alphabetically. He planned his life with precision, from retirement to rainy days. I used to tease him about it, but now I get it. He wasn't just planning life, he was preparing for absence. And he did it well. After the funeral, I found out Dad had locked everything in tight. His will was as thorough as his tax spreadsheets. Every house, every bank account, every dusty storage key, all in my name, not Mom's. Mine. Why? Because they were divorced. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, stunned into silence. I hadn't even processed the fact he was gone. But there I was, 16 years old, with a lawyer explaining how I now owned 3 properties and a sizable chunk of change. I thought it was a mistake. I was a teenager. I still forgot to charge my phone at night. But the moment I told Mom, her smile cracked. She tried to play it off. He really adored you, didn't he? She said with this bright, plastic grin. But her eyes told a different story. A storm was coming, and it didn't take long. 2 months after we buried my dad, my mother brought home someone new. His name? Dylan. He moved in like it was nothing. 1 week, we were grieving. The next, there was this stranger in the kitchen drinking from my dad's coffee mug like it was his birthright. That mug hadn't even been washed yet. At first, I tried to keep my distance. I wanted to believe it was just temporary, a rebound, a bad dream. But every day, another piece of my dad's world disappeared. His tools in the garage, sold on Facebook Marketplace. His recliner, replaced with a beige monstrosity Dylan called modern. My dad's hoodie hanging by the back door, gone without a word. Dylan needs space, Mom said. But what about Dad's space? And then came the kicker. Maybe you could think about selling one of the properties. It'd make Dylan feel more like part of the family. What? Was she seriously asking me to hand over part of my inheritance, part of his legacy, so her new boyfriend could feel at home? I told her no, not that it mattered. The will had a stipulation. I couldn't access anything until I turned 21. Legally, nothing could be sold, shared, or touched until then. Her reaction? A smile with daggers behind it. Oh, well, she said. Guess it'll just have to wait. But from that day on, things shifted. It started with subtle things. My opinion no longer mattered. Dylan's kids, a 20-year-old daughter named Macy and her 18-year-old brother Jordan, suddenly became top priority. Weekend getaways? They were always invited. I was told to spend time with Grandma or focus on my studies. At first, I convinced myself I was overthinking. But the more time passed, the clearer it became I wasn't part of her new world. I was a remnant of her old one, a reminder of the man she moved on from way too fast. Grandma and Grandpa noticed too. They offered me comfort and space, and I clung to that like a lifeline. Most weekends, I stayed at their place, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't, and Dylan went from awkward to arrogant real quick. By the time I was 17, he acted like he owned the place. Our house, my house, became his stage. You need to show more respect around here, he'd bark. Respect? From the guy who didn't pay rent and couldn't even fix a leaky faucet? Every time he tried to boss me around, I'd hit him with a sure thing, Captain. And boy, did that grind his gears. It became my secret weapon. Passive-aggressive? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. Still, things escalated. He started giving me curfews, barking orders, even telling me what I could and couldn't do in my own home. One night I snapped. "You're not my dad," I told him, "and this isn't your house." His face turned tomato red. Mom jumped in before it turned into an all-out war. But instead of backing me up, she turned to me, exhausted and bitter, and dropped a bomb I never expected. "I think it's best if you stay somewhere else for a while." I laughed. Like, full-on stunned laughter. "You're kicking me out? From my own house?" Her face twitched. "It's just temporary. Everyone needs space." What she meant was, Dylan needs space. Not you. I didn't fight. I just left. I moved in with my grandparents full-time after that. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. It was safe. And it was mine. Weeks passed. Mom called a few times, acting like nothing happened. "We love you, she'd say. "It's just complicated." She brought over a box of my old stuff like it was some peace offering. I stopped responding. At school, I kept my head down. At home, I started focusing. My dad didn't leave me those properties to watch them rot, so I started planning. I still had 3 years until I could do anything legally, but I wasn't wasting time. I studied. I worked part-time. I built savings. I researched renovations. I even began drafting a plan to remodel the house Mom and Dylan were living in. The day I turned 21, 21, 21, that house was going to be mine again. Not in theory, in action. They had no idea what was coming. I didn't mark the calendar or throw a party when I turned 21. No candles, no shots, no big night out. Just a quiet morning at my grandparents' kitchen table, coffee in hand, and a file folder already sitting in front of me. Inside it, everything my dad left me: the deeds, the legal documents, the renovation plans I'd been quietly perfecting for 3 years. My grandfather gave me this look that said, "You ready?" And I nodded. Not because I felt ready, but because I knew it was time. It was the kind of moment you can't prepare for, even when you've been waiting years. My first step was supposed to be a simple conversation, a mature, respectful heads up. I thought maybe if I explained everything clearly, if I showed her I wasn't trying to be cruel, maybe it would go smoothly. Spoiler, it didn't. I showed up to the house one afternoon, knocked on the door, and waited. No answer. The car wasn't in the driveway, and the place felt hollow. I texted her, left a voicemail, tried to be polite. I even said I wanted to talk about the future of the property and that it wouldn't take long, but the silence spoke louder than any response ever could. Later that night, over dinner, my grandmother mentioned in passing, "Heard your mom and Dylan are on vacation down in Florida." Of course they were. While I was planning renovations on the house they'd been squatting in rent-free, they were sipping cocktails on the beach. It didn't even make me angry anymore. It just confirmed everything I already knew. They weren't going to play fair. So I stopped waiting. The house was mine. My name was on the deed. I was paying the property taxes. I wasn't evicting them in the middle of winter or tossing them onto the street without warning. I was reclaiming what belonged to me, plain and simple. A few days later, I hired a locksmith and had the locks changed. The moment I turned the key in the new front door, something shifted in me. It felt final. It felt earned. I walked through the house like a stranger visiting an Airbnb designed by a couple who didn't know what subtlety meant. Dylan's weird faux leather furniture, the giant canvas print of some beach he'd probably never been to, the shelf of cheap whiskey bottles like he was some connoisseur, it all felt off. None of it belonged here. Not with the memories of my dad echoing in every room. Replacing the locks felt like locking out a chapter of my life that had overstayed its welcome. But the next morning, the phone calls started. First my mom, then Dylan, then both of them on speaker, leaving me voicemails that escalated from confused to furious in under 12 hours. "Why would you do this?" she demanded. "We were blindsided." Dylan's voice in the background. "This is illegal. You can't just take it." Except, I could, and I had. Eventually, the first picked up. "She didn't even let me say hello. You're acting like a child," she snapped. "You changed the locks while we were on vacation?" I stayed calm. "I tried to reach out, Mom. I left messages. I waited. You didn't respond. Because we were away. You could have waited. I've already waited 3 years." She was silent for a moment, but not because she understood. She was just calculating her next move. "This is still my home," she said, her voice low. I almost laughed. "No, it's not. Not legally. Not financially. Not anymore." That's when the emotional play started. "So, what, you're just throwing us out? After everything I've done for you?" And it was that sentence, "after everything I've done for you," that reminded me why this had to happen. Because for years she treated me like a footnote, a reminder of the past. And suddenly, now that the past came with square footage and a solid foundation, I mattered again. I told her they had 2 weeks to move. I wasn't heartless. I wasn't asking them to pack up overnight, but I wasn't giving them another year either. I could hear Dylan grumbling in the background, cursing under his breath like a man who'd finally realized he was out of free rides. "We don't have anywhere else to go," she said eventually. "We weren't prepared for this." I kept my voice steady. "You had 3 years to prepare. I didn't blindside you. You ignored the clock because you assumed I wouldn't do anything. Because I didn't think you'd be this cold, she whispered. You're just like your father. I could have taken that as an insult, but I didn't. I took it as proof that I was doing the right thing. Because my dad believed in planning, in fairness, and in setting boundaries. And I was doing all three. When I showed up at the house a few days later to measure the floors and check on plumbing before the contractor arrived, they were there. Dylan was in the yard, pacing like a guard dog, while my mom stood on the porch, arms crossed. She didn't say anything at first, just watched me with this combination of disbelief and sadness. We're still figuring things out, she said eventually. We'll need more time, I reminded her. 2 weeks. That's it. Then Dylan stepped in, his voice louder than necessary. You think you can just waltz in here and kick us out like we're nothing? I don't think it, I said. I know it. And then he said it, the line that really pushed everything over the edge. You're a selfish little brat. This house means nothing to you. You're just power tripping because you got lucky in a will. I paused. Not because I was shocked, but because I wanted to be sure I remembered the moment clearly. The look on his face, the heat in his voice, the way he truly believed he was the victim. I took a step closer. Not aggressive, just firm. You got to live here for free for 3 years. You were never on the lease. You never paid a cent in taxes. This was never your home. You were a guest. And now your stay is over. He opened his mouth to fire back, but my mom stopped him. Don't, she said softly. He's made up his mind. I could see something shift in her then. Not forgiveness. Not understanding, just defeat. Maybe for the first time, she realized I wasn't bluffing. As I turned to leave, she called after me. You're going to regret this one day. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have a response, but because I didn't need one. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I wasn't punishing them. I was taking back my life, taking back my father's legacy. And maybe she'd never understand that. Maybe she'd always see it as betrayal. But deep down, I knew I was done living in someone else's version of my life. I had waited. I had tried. But now it was my turn to move forward. I thought that once the 2-week deadline passed, things would slowly calm down. Maybe they'd pack up, move on, and that would be it. I was hopeful, naively so. Instead, things only escalated. The day before they were supposed to be out, I pulled into the driveway and saw not boxes but bodies. My mom, Dylan. His daughter, Macy. A couple of family friends I hadn't seen since high school. It felt like they were staging a sit-in. As I stepped out of the car, I noticed the look sharp, pointed, like I was the villain in my own story. My mom rushed toward me, tears already in her eyes, like she'd been rehearsing this moment. Please, she said, her voice cracking. We just need a little more time. Dylan was behind her, arms folded, already puffed up like he was ready to make a scene. You can't seriously expect us to be out tomorrow, he said, like he thought his outrage was some kind of trump card. I stood firm, trying not to let my pulse give me away. I gave you 2 weeks. I've been fair. This isn't a surprise. My mom's hands trembled slightly as she reached out, touching my arm like that gesture could soften what was already set in stone. Macy's pregnant, she whispered, like it was some sort of magic phrase that would unlock my empathy. She's due in a few weeks. We can't just move right now. I froze. I hadn't known. And for a second, I faltered. Because, yeah, that changes things emotionally. A pregnant 19-year-old facing eviction hits different. I could see it in her face. 2 wide eyes, hand resting protectively over her stomach, fear sitting just beneath the surface. But I also knew this wasn't about her. This was my mother playing every card she had left. I'm sorry, I said quietly, but this isn't about punishment. It's about boundaries. You all knew this was coming. My mom stepped back, tears falling now, but not the kind that come from genuine heartbreak. These were frustration tears, defeat tears. She'd lost control, and she didn't know what to do with that. Dylan, of course, had no such emotional filter. You're heartless, he spat. You're doing this for what? A remodel? You'd throw a pregnant girl out on the street for hardwood floors? That stung. Not because he was right, but because he knew exactly where to aim. But I didn't flinch. This is about reclaiming what's mine. You've had years to plan. This isn't sudden. It's overdue. Macy didn't say a word. She just turned and went back inside. I saw her shoulders slump as the door shut behind her, and yeah, I felt a flicker of guilt. I wasn't numb. I wasn't a monster. But I wasn't a fool either, and guilt wasn't going to build a future for me. I gave them until the end of the week. It was a compromise, even if no one said thank you. After that, I went home, my real home, feeling heavier than before. My grandmother saw it on my face before I even said a word. "You're not wrong," she told me, handing me a mug of tea. But it won't always feel good to be right. She was right. The next few days were miserable. The messages started coming in hot. Cousins, aunts, even a family friend I barely knew, all of them texting or calling with their unsolicited opinions. Some were polite, maybe just give her a few more weeks. "It's not like you need the house right now." Others were straight up vicious. "Wow. Real proud of yourself? Hope karma hits hard." One aunt left a voicemail so long it cut off halfway through her rant about how ungrateful I was for everything your mother sacrificed. Funny how nobody ever remembered what I had sacrificed. How I lost my dad, my home, my sense of stability, and then got replaced by a man with a Napoleon complex, and two kids who got treated like royalty while I got shipped off to my grandparents. I stopped answering the phone. Let them scream into the void. They weren't there when I needed support. They didn't get a vote now. Still, even knowing all that, it messed with my head. One night, I caught myself staring at the ceiling, wondering if I really was the villain here. Wondering if I'd gone too far. Wondering if I was punishing them for years of pain instead of just trying to reclaim my life. That kind of doubt, it eats at you. But every time I started to spiral, I forced myself to remember the facts. My name on the deed, my dad's signature on the will, the years I spent being treated like an inconvenience in my own house. The fact that Dylan never paid a dime. That was reality. The rest was noise. By the end of the week, the house was finally empty. No note, no apology, no acknowledgement. Just silence and a few pieces of broken furniture they didn't bother to take. When I walked through the front door that last time, it felt surreal. The rooms echoed. The air was still. But for the first time in years, it felt like mine again. I got to work immediately. Paint swatches, tile samples, contractor quotes. I threw myself into the project like it was therapy. And maybe it was. Every brushstroke, every repair, it all felt like rewriting a part of the story. Fixing what had been broken. Not just the house, but me too. My grandparents came by often to check on progress. My grandfather would nod, hands in his pockets, and say things like, "Your dad would have loved this place." And every time he said it, I believed him more. Slowly, the guilt began to ease. Not disappear, but fade. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't selfish. I was just done waiting for validation that was never going to come. About a month into renovations, I got a call from my mom. I didn't answer the first few times. I wasn't ready. But eventually, curiosity won out. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. No accusations, no drama, just a simple, "I wanted to see how you're doing." I kept it short. "I'm okay." There was a long pause, like she was struggling to decide what to say next. And then, "I'm sorry things got so ugly." That threw me off. I had braced for guilt trips, manipulation, anger, but not this. Not the first sign of reflection. I didn't say much, I just told her I needed to do what was right for me. She said she understood, but I don't know if she really did. And that was fine. Understanding wasn't a requirement anymore. We said goodbye without much ceremony. Just two people who shared a history and now lived in separate futures. After that, the calls stopped, the texts faded, and the noise quieted. The house came together faster than I expected. New floors, fresh paint, modern fixtures, it looked like a completely different space. And yet, it still held the same foundation my dad built. On move-in day, I stood in the doorway and just breathed. Not because everything was perfect, not because all the pain had vanished, but because I finally felt like I was where I belonged. The house wasn't just finished, it was reborn. And strangely enough, so was I. The paint dried, the tools packed up, the last contractor invoice paid. And just like that, the echo of chaos was gone. What remained was clean, quiet, and mine. But not in the way a deed proves ownership. It felt personal now, like I'd poured something of myself into the walls, into the floors, into the way the light hit the new kitchen tiles each morning. I'd stopped trying to make it look like my father's house again. Instead, I made it something that reflected who I'd become after everything. It still had memories. Sure, his favorite toolbox stayed in the garage, One of his old flannel shirts folded neatly in the linen closet, but the rest was forward facing. And I needed that. I chose not to live there. As tempting as it was to reclaim every inch, I knew moving in would blur lines I just started drawing. Instead, I found good tenants. A young couple with a newborn on the way. They reminded me a little of how things used to feel before it all cracked open. The way they talked about painting the nursery and hosting family dinners felt right. I handed over the keys, smiled, and walked away lighter. I didn't tell them the story of the house. That wasn't part of the rental agreement. Some walls don't need to talk. I shifted focus to school. College wasn't just a backup plan anymore, it was the plan. I poured myself into it the same way I had the house. Early classes, late night study groups, part-time jobs in between. I stayed with my grandparents through it all. They made it easy. No pressure, no conditions, just a quiet kind of love that asked for nothing in return. My grandmother always had coffee ready at 6 a.m., and my grandfather insisted on dropping me off on campus whenever it rained. Their presence never felt like a crutch. It felt like home base, safe ground to return to while everything else spun. My mom didn't call again for months, and I didn't reach out either. That silence wasn't angry anymore, just settled. We had both said our piece, and now there was nothing else demanding to be spoken. It was strange how normal the distance became, like a phone that stopped ringing and eventually didn't feel missing. Every once in a while, though, I'd get a message, a forwarded meme, a random photo from years ago. No words, just a breadcrumb trail leading nowhere. I never responded, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Because I wasn't the same kid who used to wait by the window, wondering when she'd finally choose me again. I didn't need her to. I'd chosen myself. I stayed consistent. No drama, no jabs, just space. Meanwhile, word about the eviction still floated through the family tree. An aunt sent me a passive-aggressive email around Thanksgiving. Just thinking of you, hope your conscience is as warm as your new flooring. I laughed when I read it. Deleted it too. I didn't owe anyone a justification for choosing peace. Let them stew in half-stories and assumptions. I had real things to do. The more distance I created, the clearer everything became. The manipulation, the guilt, the way Dylan had slowly taken over until I didn't even feel like a guest in my own home. It wasn't just about property or money. It was about watching someone erase your father one mug, one chair, one memory at a time and realizing your mother handed them the pen. There was a moment during finals week, sitting in a noisy campus cafe, when I caught myself smiling for no reason. Just sitting there, books open, earbuds in, coffee half gone, and I felt light. Not happy, not euphoric, but at ease. And that meant more than I thought it would. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was bracing for impact. I started making plans for the next stage. Grad school, maybe, or traveling. I wasn't sure yet, but the road ahead didn't scare me anymore. It looked wide open. One night, near the end of the semester, my grandfather found me on the porch, laptop in my lap, eyes sore from staring at screens too long. He sat beside me without a word, just sipping from his tea. After a while, he said, "You've handled everything with more grace than most people twice your age." I didn't say anything right away, just looked at him, grateful he'd seen it. Then he added, "Your father would have been proud. Not just because you stood your ground, but because you didn't lose your heart doing it." That broke something open in me. Not in a painful way, more like a dam releasing slow water. Because that had been my biggest fear the whole time, that somewhere in the middle of drawing lines and setting boundaries, I'd hardened. That maybe I'd shut so many doors I didn't know how to open them again. But hearing him say that made me feel like maybe I hadn't lost anything. Maybe I'd just reshaped it, reclaimed it. There was one last thing I needed to do, something I'd been avoiding for months. I went back to the house, not to check in or inspect anything. I just stood outside on the sidewalk, watching the porch light flicker on as the new tenants pulled into the driveway. They waved when they saw me. I smiled back, and that was it. That was all I needed. The chapter didn't end with a scream or a door slam. It ended with a wave. Quiet, certain, final. As I walked back to my car, I realized I didn't need to go inside. I already carried everything I needed with me. The lessons, the grit, the memories I chose to keep. I wasn't rebuilding just a house. I was rebuilding myself. And I liked the person standing on the other side of it. The silence between my mom and me settled like dust too light to notice at first, but eventually it covered everything. Months passed. I didn't block her, but I didn't reach out either. Sometimes I'd see her name flash across my phone, not from a call, but from group messages or family announcements, birthday reminders. Someone's wedding, that sort of thing. The kind of updates that float around when you're still technically family, even if the bonds feel paper thin. I didn't feel anger anymore, just distance. And distance was easier to manage than hurt. But still, something in me wanted to see how she was doing, not to fix anything, not to apologize, just to understand the person I had been orbiting my entire life without ever really knowing. So I drove by her new place one evening, nothing dramatic. I stayed in the car, engine running, music low. It was smaller than the house they'd lived in before, older, a little run down. I saw Macy on the porch, rocking what looked like a stroller gently back and forth. She looked exhausted in that universal new parent way. Hair pulled back, shadows under her eyes fixed on the sky like it was the only thing that didn't cry or ask for anything. She didn't see me, and I didn't make myself known. I just watched for a few minutes, long enough to feel something I didn't expect. Not pity, not resentment, just understanding. I had no ill will toward her. She didn't ask to be caught in all this. She was just surviving, like the rest of us. And that made something loosen in my chest. A knot I hadn't realized was still there. A few weeks later, my mom texted. Simple. Just, do you want to meet for coffee sometime? I stared at the screen for a while, not because I was angry, just unsure what I would even say anymore. We had spent so long dancing around each other, pushing and pulling and pretending not to hurt. What was left now? But I said yes. We picked a small cafe near the college, public enough to keep things neutral, familiar enough to feel safe. She arrived before me. Same coat she always wore when she wasn't sure how the weather would go. Hair a little longer, more gray showing, no makeup this time. She looked tired. Not in a bad way, just softer. Worn around the edges like someone who'd been forced to slow down. We ordered coffee and sat. For a while, neither of us spoke. We just stirred sugar and watched each other over ceramic rims, like we were trying to solve an old puzzle with missing pieces. She broke the silence first. You look good, she said. Like that was the easiest place to start. I nodded. I feel good. Another pause. Longer this time. Then finally, I wanted to say I'm sorry. Not because I expect anything from you, but because I should have said it a long time ago. I wasn't expecting it to hit the way it did. Not dramatically. Just deep. Like she'd touched a bruise I forgot I had. I think I always assumed we'd just figure it out eventually, she continued. That we could sweep it under enough time and it would disappear. But it didn't. And it shouldn't have. I watched her carefully. She wasn't crying. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't dodging blame either. She was just being real in a way I hadn't seen since before Dylan came into our lives. It hurt, I said quietly. Not just what happened with the house, all of it. The way you replaced Dad like he was a broken chair. The way I felt like I had to compete with strangers in my own home. And then being told to leave, like I was the problem. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't interrupt. She just nodded. I continued. I don't think I ever expected you to be perfect, but I didn't expect you to forget me so quickly either. She breathed in slowly, then exhaled like she'd been holding it in for years. I was grieving. I know that's not an excuse, but I was scared. I didn't know how to be alone. And Dylan, he made it easy to not feel things. That admission surprised me. Not because I thought she'd defend him, but because I didn't think she was capable of saying it out loud. He's gone, by the way, she added. Left when Macy had the baby. Said it was too much. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound like gloating. She wasn't looking for sympathy. She was just giving me the update. I know I messed up, she said, and I don't blame you for anything. If you never want to talk again, I'll understand. I just wanted to see you face to face and say I'm sorry. I looked at her then, really looked. And what I saw wasn't the woman who kicked me out of my own house or defended a man who treated me like an intruder. I saw someone who was broken in her own ways, someone who had made choices out of fear, out of loneliness, out of not knowing what else to do. I didn't forgive her in that moment. Forgiveness, I think, is too layered for one cup of coffee. But I saw her. Not the version I built up in my mind during late nights, filled with resentment, but the human underneath all the mistakes. And maybe that was enough. I don't hate you, I said. But I need time. I'm not trying to punish you. I just need to protect what I've built. She nodded, wiping her eyes with a napkin she hadn't unfolded yet. That's fair, more than fair. We talked for a while longer, mostly about nothing. Weather, school. The coffee, which was too bitter but still decent. When we finally stood up to leave, she hugged me. Tentative. Light. Like she didn't expect me to return it. I did. Briefly. But it was enough. As I walked back to my car, the air felt lighter. Like I'd put something down I didn't even know I was carrying. I didn't rush to call her the next day. I didn't suddenly open the door to weekend brunches or text chains, but I didn't block her either. We stayed somewhere in the middle, quiet, cautious steps toward maybe. I wasn't trying to rebuild the past. I didn't want the version of her I used to chase. I wanted something honest. If we ever built anything again, it had to be on new ground. And if we didn't, that would be okay too, because now I wasn't living out of obligation or guilt or the ache of an old wound. I had peace. I had boundaries. I had a future that didn't revolve around waiting for someone else to see my worth. And that kind of freedom, that was everything. Time passed, not like some dramatic turning of the page, but the way seasons shift without asking for permission. You wake up one day and realize the cold has lifted, the trees are different, and so are you. That's how it felt. The house had tenants who paid on time, sent cheerful updates, and even invited me to see the baby once she was born. I didn't go, but I appreciated the gesture. Sometimes, just knowing you're welcome is enough. College rolled on. I graduated earlier than expected, picked up an offer from a nonprofit that worked with underserved youth. It didn't pay a ton, but it gave me purpose. Most people around me were chasing salary, title, something big and loud. I just wanted something steady, something honest. My grandparents still kept a bedroom for me, even though I moved into a modest studio across town. They said I could always come back, but I never had to. That was the difference between them and everyone else. I never felt like I owed them anything for the love they gave. It was quiet and unconditional, the kind that doesn't need to be repaid. I visited them often. We'd sit on the porch or share simple dinners. My grandfather liked updates on the house, even though I wasn't living there. Still standing? He'd joke, and I'd say, still proud of it. He'd nod like he already knew. My mother and I didn't become close again. We never returned to weekly calls or birthday dinners, and maybe that was for the best, but we stayed civil. Occasionally she'd text, usually something short like thinking of you or hope work's going well. I responded when I felt like it. No guilt, no grudge, just space. The last time I saw her in person was a random Tuesday in early spring. I ran into her at a local market. She was holding a bouquet of daffodils and looked surprised, but not upset to see me. We made small talk. She told me Macy had gone back to school part-time, that the baby was crawling now, that she was picking up some weekend shifts at a bookstore. She seemed tired, but there was something else in her face too, like a person who had finally stopped running from themselves. I don't know what I expected from that moment. Maybe a swell of sadness or anger, but it never came. I smiled, told her I was glad things were working out, and we went our separate ways. No tears, no drama. Just two people who shared a history and had finally made peace with their separate futures. That night, I sat outside my apartment watching the city lights blink like tired stars. I thought about everything that had happened about my dad, about the house, about how things changed so fast it nearly knocked me off my feet. But somehow I was still standing, still breathing, still building. I thought about the moment I first learned the house was mine, the weight of it, the confusion, the loneliness, and how I'd turned it into something solid. Not just the bricks and paint, but the way it helped me grow. My dad didn't leave me that house because he wanted me to fight over it. He left it because he knew I'd need something to stand on when everything else fell apart. And I had. I'd turned grief into foundation, pain into structure. I had taken all the noise and turned it into quiet strength. People still ask me sometimes if I regret how I handled things, if I'd go back and be more forgiving, more patient, more soft. I always answer the same way. I didn't make those choices out of anger. I made them because I had to learn how to protect myself when no one else would. That's not revenge. That's survival. That's healing. I kept my father's flannel shirt in the top drawer of my dresser, folded neatly, untouched. Not because I wore it, but because it reminded me that someone once prepared for my future like it mattered. When I held it, I remembered the kind of man he was: precise, loyal, quietly strong. I wanted it to become that kind of person, not just for me, but for whoever came after me. There's a kind of freedom in realizing you don't need to be understood by everyone, that your story doesn't have to be retold with perfect balance or shared sympathy. I never gave the full story to my extended family. Let them think what they want. The truth lives with me. Not the version twisted by guilt or passed down through whispers, but the version I lived, the kind where I was pushed out of my own home, stood my ground, and reclaimed it without cruelty. Years later, I passed by the house again. The couple still lived there. It looked even better now: window boxes full of flowers, a new porch swing, kids' bikes leaning against the fence. It didn't make me sad to see it in someone else's hands. It made me proud, because the legacy wasn't the wood or the roof. It was what it gave me: a future, a starting line, a place to step forward from. My dad didn't leave me a house to live in. He left me proof that I was worth protecting, even after he was gone. And that proof stayed with me long after the tenants moved in, long after my mother faded into quiet updates and neutral texts. That proof lived in my choices, in the way I carried myself through grief, through rejection, through doubt. It lived in how I built a life without needing permission from people who once made me feel small. There's a kind of peace that comes from surviving something no one saw you struggle through. It's not loud. It doesn't arrive with applause or recognition. It just shows up in your reflection one day and you realize you like the person staring back. That's where I ended up. Not bitter, not broken, just free. I still have days when the past taps me on the shoulder. A memory, a scent, a voice. But those moments don't own me anymore. I nod, acknowledge them, and keep walking. Because I've learned that closure isn't a door slamming shut. It's just knowing you can leave a room without looking back. And I did, with both feet, and no regrets. Story 2. My first indication that something was seriously off should have been the text message I received from my bank. I saw some unusual activity on your account, but I was too preoccupied with client meetings and spreadsheets at work to give it more than a quick look. That message signaled the end of my previous existence and the beginning of something I never believed I could do. My name is Gemma. Hello, are you all right? Tiffany peeked into my desk during work. You appear to have seen a ghost. With trembling palms, I gazed at my phone. My account. It's deserted. All of my money, emergency fund, and savings. Everything. What? How can that be? With a worried expression on her face, Tiffany drew up a chair. Mom? I muttered as the understanding struck me like a kick to the stomach. Somehow, she must have gained access. We started a joint account while I was a college student. I didn't ever shut it. Give her a call. Tiffany squeezed my shoulder and encouraged. Yes, I did. The call repeatedly went directly to voicemail. I grabbed my handbag and said, I have to go home. There's a problem. When I pulled into our family's driveway, the journey home was a haze. I saw that Mom's automobile was missing. At first glance, everything inside appeared normal, even though the front door was shut. Then I noticed her flowing calligraphy on the paper on the kitchen counter. Gemma, my dearest. I'll be abroad by the time you read this. I apologize, but I wanted a new beginning. You'll comprehend eventually. Mom, love. I clenched my fist around the note. My eyes are burning with tears. You get it? You get it? I yelled at the deserted home. It buzzed on my phone. Unknown figure. Hi there, is Gemma Myers here? The voice of a guy inquired. Indeed, who is this? Anderson Felix? Your grandma? Talia's lawyer. I have been attempting to contact you. I regret to notify you that last week your grandma died away. The room whirled. I learned to be strong from Grandma Talia, the only person who ever defied my mother. Lost. We need to talk about some critical issues pertaining to her estate, Felix went on. Is it possible for you to visit my workplace tomorrow? Yes, I am capable of doing that. I hugged my knees to my chest and sunk to the kitchen floor after hanging up. I was shadowed. Crouching next to me, Gideon remarked, I came as soon as I could. My pal from high school was always there for me. You may need backup. Tiffany warned over the phone. She handled things well. All of my money. My voice broke. Grandma Talia has already left as well. His shoulders touched mine as we sat side by side. Do you recall how your mother persuaded you to join her business instead of attending college? And it was Talia who took over. I wiped my tears and nodded. She covered the cost of my first semester. Advised me to keep my dreams intact. Jim, your mother has been playing these games with you all your life. Guilt trips, deception, and unpaid loans are all examples. I muttered that I believed she had changed. Lately, she seemed different, more steady. At last, we were developing a genuine friendship. Once more, my phone buzzed. Devin texted me at work. Hello, your mom just sent the office an email informing them that you would be taking a leave of absence due to a family emergency. Is everything all right? God, oh God. I presented the message to Gideon. She's trying to hide, ensuring that nobody inquires as to why I could be absent for a few days. This was her strategy. Gideon spoke in a harsh tone. Everything. Re-establishing contact with you. Gaining your confidence. Only want her to purify me. The feeling of numbness was subsiding. Darker things took their place. Something that rather alarmed me. What are you contemplating? Gideon inquired, examining my face. I straightened my shoulders and got to my feet. What Grandma Talia used to say constantly comes to mind. Allowing karma to take its course is sometimes the finest form of retaliation. But what do you know? Perhaps karma needs a little assistance from time to time. Jem, no. Pay attention. I have an appointment with Grandma's attorney tomorrow. In any case, in her will, she abandoned me. It's a beginning. Mom believes she is. She doesn't know what's going to happen. Gideon stood with a worried expression on his face. Just use caution. People are changed by revenge. I've already changed, I remarked, surveying the home that was filled with so many memories of deceit and deception. Perhaps that was just what I needed. My phone gave me one last buzz. Another warning from the bank. My card has just been used in a Singaporean airport by Mom. Go for it, Mom. Go for it. Even though it was cold outdoors in the fall, Felix's workplace seemed excessively warm. As I watched him go through a pile of papers, I shifted about on the leather chair. He adjusted his spectacles and continued, Before we start, I would want to offer my sympathies. For me, Talia was more than simply a customer. She was a close companion. Thank you. I tightened my throat. I'm still in shock that she's gone. She talked about you a much. Felix produced a heavy envelope. In fact, she was really worried about you during our previous encounter, Tiffany mouthed as she slid in as the door opened. I apologize for being late. Knowing that I couldn't do this alone, I requested her to join me for moral support as she sat down next to me. Felix went on, as you know, your grandma had a keen sense of business. She created a series of boutique hotels that are currently worth about $12 million. I jerked my head up. $12 million. And that only includes the hotels. He moved a piece of paper across the desk. Her investment portfolio, personal estate, and other items are also included. Felix was outlining the specifics when Tiffany took my hand beneath the desk. My brain was spinning with the figures. Gemma, she left everything to you. Each coin, each property, each asset. However, what about Mom? Before I could stop them, the words came out. Felix's face grew stern. Elizabeth's absence from the will was made clear by Talia. One paraphrase her when she says, My daughter has taken enough. A little hysterical laughter sprang in my throat. When Mom learns, she will go crazy, Felix remarked softly. She already knows. Threatening to challenge the will from Singapore, she has been phoning my office every day, I whispered. How practical. Something else is involved. Felix opened a drawer on his desk. This was left for you by Talia, stated that I ought to offer it to you in private. I took an old leather diary from him. Inside, the pages were packed with Grandma's recognizable handwriting. Felix stood and said, Give me a minute. Could you please assist me get some documents from the other room, Tiffany? I opened the journal to a marked page after they had departed. I'm leaving, my beloved Gemma, if you're reading this. However, I've seen you develop into a powerful, competent lady. Elizabeth will do all in her power to keep you reliant on her, but the riches I've given you is more than just cash. It's liberty. Make good use of it, and keep in mind, Allowing a snake to believe it is winning until it is unable to break free from the trap it has made for itself is sometimes the best way to deal with it. Grandma Talia, I love you very much. I closed the diary with shaking hands. Tiffany came back by herself as the door opened. Are you all right? She sat next to me and asked. I muttered that she knew. Grandma somehow knew Mom would give this a try. What are you contemplating? A notification appeared on my phone before I could respond. Mom sent an email. I know you're furious, darling, but I couldn't help myself. The chance was too wonderful to ignore. I'll give you twice as much back when my investment is profitable. I swear. And your granny was mentioned to me. I'm so sorry. We ought to discuss the will. Give me a call, Mom, love. She's amazing. As she read over my shoulder, Tiffany exhaled. Even after stealing your money, she still believes she should receive a portion of the estate. I got up and started to pace the office. What's insane, do you? I still have a part of me that wants to believe her. That's her level of skill. She's nearly convinced me even now. What is the play then? I was thinking of a scheme. Fearsome and very clear. We allow her to believe she is winning. Let Felix know that I'm thinking about splitting the inheritance. Gemma. Mom is eager to get home. All right, let's make sure she has something to return home to. I took up Grandma's diary. She put herself in a trap. Felix was prepared to sign the transfer forms when he returned with a stack of papers. I sat down and said, actually, I have some inquiries concerning property management, particularly around giving someone the impression that they have access to resources that they do not truly own. Felix's eyebrow went up. This must be related to Elizabeth, I suppose. Let's say that when it comes to dealing with snakes, I'm following my grandmother's instructions. Something changed inside of me as I signed paper after document. The deceived and heartbroken daughter was disappearing, replaced by a more powerful individual, someone who had studied long-term strategy from the greatest. As we were done, Felix remarked, one more thing. Instructions about the main house's master suite were left by your grandma. Claimed that when the time came, you would know what to do with it. I grinned as I thought of the room that Mom had always wanted, but that Grandma had never given her. Yes, I am well aware of what I should do. Right up until she doesn't, Mom will adore it. Will you allow her to remain in the master suite? Tiffany's coffee almost suffocated her. I had not yet unloaded the boxes that surrounding us as we sat in my new office at the hotel's headquarters. Your bank account was just wiped out by the same woman. That's precisely why it's ideal. I opened my laptop security camera video and saw the opulent chamber. Grandma had planted cameras all throughout the place. Cunning after Mom's last jewelry loan attempt. Tiffany smiled. I enjoy it. We were stopped by a knock on the door. Gideon entered with a pile of documents. He placed them on my desk and remarked, Your mother has been busy. At the bank? I asked my buddy to get her transaction history. My jaw tightened as I turned the pages of the documents. First-class tickets, upscale lodging, and shopping excursions. She is consuming my savings as if it were insignificant. Gideon pointed to a highlighted entry and said, There's more. Here in town, she has started calling real estate brokers. She intends to return sooner rather than later. I turned my laptop around and showed them a recent email I had received. I've had time to reflect on my behavior, and I've come to the realization that I made a lot of horrible mistakes, dearest Gemma. Next week, I'll be returning home. I hope we can chat, even though I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I've heard that you inherited Talia's property. Maybe we can talk about it at dinner. Mom, love, whoa, said Tiffany. She is not even making an effort to conceal her intentions. Excellent. I pulled out my calendar. It's time to get the scene ready. Can you do something for me, Gideon? He arched an eyebrow. It depends. Is it lawful? For the most part. I grinned. Next week, I need you to come get Mom from the airport. Give the impression that I'm too preoccupied with the hotels to attend in person. Bring her to the house after that, Tiffany realized. Where? Everything will be prepared just as she anticipates. A wealthy daughter who is prepared to be duped once more. That's right. Grandma's journal came out. However, we must first make some adjustments to the master suite. We turned the space into an ideal trap throughout the course of the following week. Each expensive item was photographed and cataloged. There was a concealed camera in each drawer. All the safes were set up to record when they were opened. The tracking program is set up. Declaring, Devin shut down his laptop. I swore him to secrecy and brought him in for his knowledge. You will be notified of any emails she sends or gets from the house network. You're quite skilled at this. Gideon watched as I set up ostentatious-looking costume jewelry in the suite. Secure. I claimed to have learned from the finest. I reflected on all the occasions I had witnessed my mother deceive others. I learned everything I know about deceit from her. It's time to prove to her that I've been an excellent student. It buzzed on my phone. Felix texted. Elizabeth's attorney phoned. She's pulling out of the will challenge. She is, of course. Reading over my shoulder, Tiffany remarked. When she believes she can have the entire cake, we battle over crumbs. Gideon drew me aside as we were wrapping up the preparations that night. Are you certain about this? You still have time to change your mind. I surveyed the space that would eventually become Mom's opulent prison. What did she say when I started college, do you know? You might be assisting me with my business instead of wasting time studying. She persuaded me to pay her for my tuition. Unless Grandma had intervened. I recall, he responded quietly. That year, you were a complete disaster. She has never had to deal with the fallout. Excellent, not authentic ones. She simply goes on to the next victim, her next plan. Not now. A flight confirmation rang on my phone. Tomorrow morning, Mom would land. I said, places, everyone. It's time to add the finishing touches. We labored through the night to finalize the specifics. Designer clothing in a closet that is equipped with security sensors. A package of jewels that would challenge her self-control. Bank statements that displayed accounts she would never be allowed to access were inadvertently placed on the desk. I put Grandma's antique silver mirror on the vanity and added, one last thing. Mom has wanted it all her life. Made 2 attempts to take it. It would make the ideal bait now. Tiffany gave me a hard embrace as everyone laughed. She will attempt to flip this around on you, don't you think? Make you feel bad? I'm hoping for it. I lock the door to the suite. I'm confident the strategy will succeed because of this. Up until she does the kill, Mom can't help but play the victim. Leave my flat alone with her. I took one final look at the security feeds. Everything was flawless. Every little thing was planned to play on Mom's manipulation and greed. Go for it, Mom. To the empty room? I muttered. We'll see how you feel about being the one that performed. I saw Gideon's vehicle pull into the driveway on the security feed. Mom appeared just as I recalled when she went outside, an expression of studied regret, well-groomed hair, and designer sunglasses. I said, "Showtime," and went downstairs to greet her. The front door opened. Gemma, sweetheart. Mom hurried over, arms extended. She had the scent of phony promises and pricey perfume. I kept my arms at my sides and let her embrace me. Welcome back, Mom. I've missed you terribly, my love. She withdrew, her eyes sparkling. I realized that what I did was unacceptable, but I was in a terrible situation. Please allow me to clarify. Not right now. As I saw Gideon carry in her bag, I interrupted her. Your flight must have left you exhausted. Please allow me to show you your room. As we ascended the steps, her eyes brightened. The main bedroom. But Talia always had that. I now own it. I want you to have it, I replied, opening the door. With her mask on, Mom entered the lavish space and paused to admire the antique furniture, silk curtains, and the shining vanity with Grandma's silver mirror. It's ideal, she exhaled. She traces the mahogany dresser with her fingers. Simply ideal. There's more. I unlocked the walk-in wardrobe. I brought in some clothes for you. Additionally, there is jewelry in the safe that you may check out for special events. She glanced at the safe and then back at me. Darling, you're too giving. After all of my actions. Family is family. The words tasted unpleasant as I spoke. In addition, Grandma would have preferred that we make amends about the bequest. Mom took a seat on the soft bed. I interjected, let's talk about it over dinner, even though I know I have no right to ask. I'll be back around 7, but I have a meeting now. You own the house. Come on in. She grabbed my hand as I turned to go. Hold on, Gemma. Regarding the money, I really apologize. Almost anything. I'll put things right, I swear. Recalling all the previous promises she had made and violated, I grasped her palm. Mom, I'm sure you will. You will, I'm sure. Downstairs. Gideon stood beside his vehicle. She bought it wholeheartedly. I opened the security app on my phone after taking it out. Mom was already looking around the room at everything. She's checking the combination on the safe, you see. Delicate. He gave a snort. Do you want me to stay? No. Go, but don't turn off your phone. Tonight is the start of phase 2. I'm back at work. Devin and Tiffany were keeping an eye on the streams. Devin said she's gone in and out of that safe 6 times. On the laptop we left in the room, she has already attempted to access your email. Are there any calls? I sat down behind my desk and inquired. 3. Tiffany told her former real estate agent everything. It appears that she intends to remain. Excellent. I displayed the fictitious bank statements that we had created. It's time to give her a serious thought. Forward them to her room's printer. We observed the printer in action, her life's work. Mom almost leaped for the papers. As she read the data, her eyes widened. Tiffany whispered, God, she's not even trying to hide her greed. She believes she is not required to. I'm still that gullible girl who gave over her college fund, I murmured in her head. It buzzed on my phone. Mom texted me. Could we shift supper sooner, darling? I want to talk about so many things. Let's get started, I said, displaying the message to them. Is everyone prepared for the second phase? Devin pulled up the monitoring program and smiled. The cameras are rolling. The audio is absolutely clear. It's your turn, boss. I responded to the SMS naturally. Mom, at the home it is 530. I'll get takeout, she responded right away. Excellent. And I appreciate you giving me another opportunity, sweetie. You won't be sorry, yes, but you will. As I saw her strutting in front of Grandma's mirror, I muttered, Of course you will, Gemma. Gideon spoke quietly. You have time to put an end to this. Grandma's falsehoods in her journal and years of manipulation left me with an empty bank account. Give it the impression that it is winning. I straightened my shoulders and responded, No. She must acquire knowledge. The people we have harmed the most can sometimes teach us the most difficult lessons. Unaware that every gesture, word, and plan was being captured on camera, Mom was already planning her next move on the screen. She had stepped straight into the planned trap. It would be interesting to have dinner. With Mom sat across from me, nibbling at her pad thai, the dining room seemed smaller. She had gone to the wardrobe and changed into one of the fancy clothes. A silk blouse that most likely cost more than the average person's rent each month. The hotels are doing so well, she replied nonchalantly, directing the discussion in the direction she desired. Talia had a knack for business no matter what. Like a daughter, like a mother, I guess. Similar to a granny, similar to a granddaughter. I made the correction while briefly seeing her tense expression. Of course, sweetheart, I did get a lot of knowledge about hotel management when I was overseas. If you ever want assistance, it buzzed on my phone. Devin texted. She has been searching the internet for information on transferring property titles between relatives. Well, I said, putting my fork down, I need your assistance with something. I have a lot on my plate, and the Richardson account requires care. Mom's eyes glowed. The Richardson story. One of our most important customers. I have the documents in my study. Do you want to look? She almost leaped out of her seat. Take the lead, sweetheart. In the research. On my laptop, I displayed fictitious financial documents. Mom's perfume nearly choked me as she leaned over my shoulder. Look at these numbers? I gestured toward exaggerated figures. They want to make their collaboration bigger. Interesting. She inhaled while mentally calculating percentages. With my experience, you know. She was interrupted by a crash coming from upstairs. Both of us raised our eyes. It's probably just the wind, I said while trying not to smile. Gideon, right on time, Mom said quickly. I should check my window. I believe I did not close it, naturally. Go slowly. I opened my phone's security feed as soon as she walked out. Mom hurried into the master bedroom and headed straight for the silver mirror that belonged to Grandma. She'd touched the frame with her hands, locating the concealed compartment that we had planted. I got you. As she produced the fictitious documents we had hidden there, I muttered. Massive upcoming deals are displayed in confidential hotel contracts. Once more, my phone buzzed. Tiffany, this time your mother just tried to email photos of the contracts to someone caught in our filter. Excellent, Mom returned, looking flushed but triumphant. Everything's fine upstairs. Now, about the Richardson account. Actually, I'm feeling tired. I faked a yawn. Rain check, naturally. Darling, you work too hard. She kissed my cheek. I think I'll make some calls. Catch up with old friends. Old friends like Marcus? I asked innocently, naming her former partner in crime. She froze for a microsecond. I haven't spoken to Marcus in years. Funny, because he phoned the office today. Something regarding a business offer. Mom's mask dropped slightly. Did he? Well, I'm sure it's nothing major. Later that night in my apartment, I viewed the security cams with Gideon. Mom was making call after call. Her enthusiasm scarcely held. She's already attempting to set up meetings with possible investors, Gideon said, skimming through the intercepted emails using the false contracts as bait. Just as she did in Singapore, I slumped back, tired. Same script, different players. Gemma Gideon stroked my arm. I noticed how you cringed when she embraced you. There is a cost to this. I'm all right. No, you're not. You're becoming like her. It was a slap of words. She is not like me at all. No, laying complex traps, engaging in mental games. When this is finished, what happens? She must acquire knowledge. But how much did it cost you? He swung my chair around to look at him. Jem, we've been friends since high school. You're not this person. My phone flashed an alarm before I could react. Mom was attempting to access my computer while she was in the study. I must leave. Standing, I said. Hold on, Gemma. My hand was grabbed by Gideon. Just keep in mind who you are. Don't let retaliation alter that. On the drive to the home, his remarks followed me down to my car even after I pulled away. Grandma's notebook, karma, and repercussions were on my mind. When I got there, Mom was back in her room, looking quite innocent. The security logs, however, provided a different account. Attempted computer access, strange phone calls, and picture documents. Is everything all right? As I walked by her door, she yelled. Perfect, I said, envisioning the trap closing in on her. One step at a time. Everything is flawless. Later, however, as I lay in bed, Gideon's remarks continued to replay in my mind. You're not this person. Perhaps not. However, perhaps this was just the person I needed to be in order to escape her manipulative web. Phase 3 would begin tomorrow, at which point we would determine who had gained the most insight into deceit. Davin said that she will be meeting with investors today. 3 of them from the Blue Lotus restaurant burst into my workplace. I looked at my timepiece. Exactly on time. Is everything ready? Tiffany has the concealed camera already. And you know who else was there? He slipped his phone over my desk and displayed the restaurant's entry security footage. Marcus, your old pal. The sight of Mom's ex-partner, the man who had previously assisted her with so many people, made my stomach knot. She's doing a great job reassembling the band. Do you want me to cancel? Devin inquired. This is becoming serious. No. I grabbed my coat and got up. This is just what we require. Forward the live stream to me. When I got there, the Blue Lotus was full, but I saw Mom right away at a corner table, holding court with 4 elegantly attired individuals. Marcus was sitting next to her, and he looked just as shady as I recalled. One table, the hostess inquired. I'm actually going to meet someone. Tiffany was sitting at the bar, sipping a martini, so I went over there. She held up her phone to record the encounter. You won't believe what these individuals are being promised. As I slid into the stool next to her, she muttered, 3-star rates for 5-star hotels. 30% returns are assured, similar to Singapore. As I saw my mother make ecstatic gestures, I mumbled, different nation, same fraud. It buzzed on my phone. Are you certain of this, Gideon? Stopping is still possible. I turned my attention to Mom's table and disregarded the message. Already, one of the investors had taken out his checkbook. Right now, I told Tiffany. Across the restaurant, she hit a button on her phone. The phone rang for Mom. She moved away from the table and excused herself. Hi there, she replied. Tiffany did a perfect job of hiding her voice. Miss S. Myers. Sandra from the fraud department of First National Bank is here. We're phoning because of some questionable transactions. As Tiffany told me about investigations and frozen accounts, I saw Mom's face go white. Her hands were shaking by the time she hung up. I stood up and whispered, Showtime. Gemma. When Mom saw me coming, she raised the pitch of her voice. How unexpected. Just now, I was out to lunch with some old friends. Marcus and other old friends. I gave a chilly smile. The same Marcus who assisted you in 3 states' worth of investment scams. The investors at the table paused their conversation and exchanged glances. Sweetheart, You don't understand. Mom chuckled uneasily. We were just talking about some possible business ventures, similar to the fictitious contracts you took from my research. I took out my phone and displayed the surveillance footage of her taking pictures of papers, or even the fake signatures you have been honing. Marcus hurried to his feet. I yelled, I should go sit down. You will also want to hear this. Other customers were watching the drama play out at the quiet restaurant. Mom's flawless facade was crumbling. These folks have a right to know who they're actually interacting with. With a carrying voice, I went on. Shall the first share Singapore with them? About how you cleared out your own daughter's bank account only last week? Or about the millions you stole? I wasn't going to repay it that way. Mom stumbled. As if you reimbursed the other families. The lives you damaged were destroyed by you. An investor got up and gathered his documents. We're probably done here. Hold on. Mom took hold of his arm. I can describe anything. However, they were already on their way, murmuring that they would phone their attorneys. Marcus attempted to get away, but Tiffany stopped him. She remarked politely. The police would love to talk to you two. They are directly outdoors. Mom's neatly crafted world fell apart as she fell into her chair. Why? She muttered. Why would you harm me in this way? Why? I bent down so she could see the years of hurt and betrayal in my eyes. Because I learned a lot from you, Mom. You showed me that when there is money to be made, family is meaningless. I learned from you that trust is really another instrument of control. Your mommy is me. No, I interrupted her. Everyone now knows that you are a swindler who just so happened to give birth to me. Almost simultaneously, two policemen came inside the eatery. Mom's gaze flitted about, searching for ways out. I stepped aside and said, Don't worry. They haven't arrived yet. Think of this as a sneak peek at upcoming attractions. Her words halted me as I turned to go. She said, I truly was going to repay you this time. I genuinely wanted to change. I briefly thought she was telling the truth, almost falling for the tears and the quivering lip. The ideal portrayal of a mother who has repented. Nearly. I murmured, Goodbye, Mom, and turned to go. While you can, take advantage of the master suite. The actual performance has not yet begun. Mom was seen pacing the master suite and making frantic phone calls on the surveillance footage. 3 days had passed since the event at the restaurant, and her entire life was falling apart. A police report was made by another investor, Tiffany said as she entered my office. For and Marcus then. Singing like a canary, I questioned, keeping my eyes fixed on the screen. As it happens, he documented everything, even Singapore. Mom's 20th call attempt of the day lighted up my phone. I responded this time. Please, Gemma. Her voice began to break. We must speak. Come spend an hour at my office, I texted Gideon after hanging up. Mom came precisely on schedule, dressed in the same high-end ensemble from her first day back. It was rumpled now, as though she had slept in it. Take a seat. I pointed to the chair on the other side of my desk. I know you're upset, darling. Furious? I took out a folder and laughed. Let's discuss anger. This is a statement from a family of 5 that lost everything in Singapore. When the father found out what you had done, he suffered a heart attack. She winced. I had no idea. Or what about this? I took out another piece of paper. This old Miami couple had to sell their house. Or the Chicago single mother who lost her kids' college savings. Give up, she muttered. Why? Did you not want this? To talk about your best hits? I laid down the papers on the desk. Not to mention your most recent masterwork, robbing your own daughter. I had to be desperate. The investment opportunity turned out to be fraudulent. Like everything else in your life, I came to an end. She got up and paced. Gemma, what do you want from me? An expression of regret? All right. I apologize. I apologize for all of this. No, you apologize for being caught. When I hit a button on my phone, security footage from the master suite appeared on the office TV. Apologies. Every phone conversation, meeting, and effort to set up fresh scams was captured on tape. Mom's face turned pale. You? I've been under your observation, gaining knowledge from the greatest. I grinned. You always wanted me to follow in your footsteps, didn't you? Copies of everything, including testimonies from previous victims, Marcus's records, and proof of your most recent scam attempts, are already in the hands of the authorities. She sank back onto the seat. Why? Your mommy is me. That's right. You were meant to keep me safe. Instead, nurture me. I learned from you that love is really another instrument of control. I got up and moved around the desk, but I learned something from my grandmother. The second is about repercussions and karma. How will you respond? I gave her an envelope that contained a one-way ticket to a Montana tiny town. Additionally, there is enough cash for a small apartment's rent for 6 months. Montana. She had a terrified expression. However, my life is here. The days of being a jerk are past. Accept the ticket. Go away. Make a new start or not. I'll also give the media access to everything. You have an option. You wouldn't. I showed her the draft email to all of the major news outlets after taking out my phone. Give me a try. Her face was streaming with tears. This time, real ones. Not the planned fall. Usually she would deploy. In my own way, I truly loved you. I am aware. I'm giving you more of an opportunity to leave than you provided your other victims because of this. Gideon entered the office through the open door. Are the cars ready? Look between us, Mom, holding onto the envelope. When? Right now. You will be driven to the airport by Gideon. She got up unsteadily and grabbed her high-end handbag. That and everything else from the master suite stays. I added, either you start over or you don't. I just had a glimpse of the real her, the terrified person hiding behind her self-assured exterior. She took a stride toward me and raised her arms to embrace me, but I took a step back. Mom, goodbye. Tears still streaming down her face, she gave one nod and went out with Gideon. When they were gone, Tiffany entered with 2 wine glasses. Are you all right? As I took a glass, I watched Gideon's vehicle move away through the window. Have I simply turned into her? Making use of her own deception? No, Tiffany firmly stated. You offered her a fresh start. She never gave anyone more than that. Gideon texted me and my phone buzzed. She's in the vehicle. I'm still weeping. Actual tears. Really, it's over, I said. Not exactly. Taking out Grandma's diary, Tiffany said. 1 more page is left for you to read. I turned it to the page that was indicated. Get a final glimpse of Grandma's recognizable handwriting. Don't forget, sweetheart, forgiveness is a permanent liberation, but retribution may provide temporary satisfaction. You have an option. I put the diary away, considering karma, repercussions, and Mom's tears, about the fine line that separates retribution from justice. I made the decision. What would I pick, though? Through the window, the tiny Montana bistro seemed just like it had in the security pictures. I saw my mother cleaning tables while wearing a plain black uniform in place of her expensive clothing. Are you certain about this? From the driver's seat, Gideon inquired. Grandma was correct about forgiving, I confessed. Even though Mom isn't deserving. Do you want me to enter? I gave a headshake. I'll have to accomplish this on my own. As I walked in, the bell sounded. Mom was restocking sugar packets with her back to me. Without looking back, she stated, We're closing in 10 minutes. Hi, Mother. She turned slowly after freezing. The well-executed charisma and flawless cosmetics were gone. She had a genuine appearance. Gemma, her voice broke. How did you come across you? You were never lost to me. At the counter, I took a seat. Please, coffee. Dark. As she poured the cup, her hands trembled. Do you want to see whether I'm doing fraud once more? No. The private investigator's weekly reports accomplished that. I sipped. This is the reason I'm here. I slid an envelope across the counter after taking it out. Dozens of letters, all addressed to me, were found within. They all came back unopened. You got them, she said in a whisper. Every 23. Until yesterday, I just couldn't read them. Mom held on to the counter. I also think you're sincere about trying to change, about apologizing. I took out a second envelope. I thus brought you something. Carefully, she opened it. She gasped upon seeing what was inside. Grandma, a silver mirror. This time, the genuine one. It's not the Master Suite duplicate. Why? For mending must begin somewhere. I looked her in the eyes. However, there are restrictions. She took a heavy seat. Naturally. You remain here first. Continue to work and to live a moral life. I took a folder out. Second, you assist me in resolving your victim's issues. The Singaporean family comes first. How? I've used the hotel's earnings to create a reparation fund. 20% of your pay will be your contribution. It's a start. but it won't solve everything. Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones, like that day in the workplace. What about us? The third requirement is that I inhale deeply, total truthfulness. Not another cons. No more deceit. Just the facts. Despite the pain, particularly at that time, she lightly touched the mirror. Have I ever explained to you why I began running? Drawbacks? No, your dad. She hesitated. He left us with nothing. I had a kid when I was 22. A bank account that is empty. I made a self-promise that I would never again feel so powerless. So instead, you made people feel powerless? She winced. Indeed. I also somehow lost sight of the distinction between harming people and defending myself. You included. The lights in the cafe flickered. It's time to close. Standing, I said, I have to go, but I'll be back next month. We can discuss over coffee if you want to see how I'm doing. Give it a shot. She almost reached for me as she walked around the counter. I'm not worthy of another opportunity. No, I concurred. However, I merit the opportunity to recover. And perhaps this is the beginning. I approached the door and then turned around. And Mom, too. Cheers to your birthday. She reached for her mouth. You recalled. I recall every detail, both the positive and negative. That is the reason they are so crucial and difficult. Gideon was waiting outside. How did it go? I glanced across the window. Mom was sobbing softly while holding Grandma's mirror. I said, she's different, very distinct. Individuals are subject to change. Softly, he said. If their desire is strong enough, it buzzed on my phone. Tiffany texted, Did you give the mirror to her? Indeed, I returned the type. And perhaps something more significant, an opportunity. I reflected on Grandma's final comments in her notebook as we drove away about repercussions and karma. Yes, but choice is also important. About making the decision to end cycles rather than continue them. Gideon replied, as we entered the freeway, Mom being sent into exile is something your grandma would be proud of offering her a way to turn her life around. She gave herself more than that. I felt the one letter I had saved in my pocket, Mom's most recent, which details her first honest salary, her little flat. She tries to make things right. Perhaps destroying someone wasn't the goal of retaliation. Perhaps it was about making them confront themselves at times, to alter, to develop. And that transformation could, just might, be the cure for us both. Come on, let's get home. As I saw the cafe go from the rearview mirror, I murmured, we need to go to work. The money for reparations would not grow on its own. Additionally, a family in Singapore was about to receive the first of many payments to make amends, along with an unexpected letter of apology. Although it wasn't a flawless conclusion, it was a start. Story 3. My mom gave me a onesie that read surprise baby of a disappointment during my baby shower. I chuckled when he said that it was a joke, so I did this. After 3 months, there came a loud knock on the door. Yes, I did realize then that my child's first article of clothes was also my family's last testament to my presence. Let me back up, though. A nice, low-key baby shower was the plan. Cupcakes baked at home. A few decorations from Pinterest. At 2 in the morning, my husband continued to tape to the wall. Some friends, some family. The typical things people do when they're anticipating a kid, The only person in the room who appeared even somewhat pleased for me was my husband, Adam. All the others? They came to perform after all. My mother wore pearls. Rita, my sister, looked like she was walking the Met Gala carpet in a floor-length dress. And each time someone inquired about my well-being, she somehow responded by discussing her impending promotion. Traditional. Rita. In any case, I had nearly survived the afternoon without encountering any emotional obstacles. The presents then arrived. A little giraffe with its tag still on it, some pacifiers, and a couple baby blankets. Aunt Laura, nice touch. A glittering grandma-to-be sticker was then placed on the front of the present bag my parents gave me. I should have known too. I ought to have known. There was a onesie inside, white cotton, inscribed in large black characters and ranging from 0 to 3 months. A disappointment, baby of a surprise. For a moment, the room was completely quiet. Then, when her mother publicly makes fun of her life decisions, I did what any emotionally stable eldest daughter would do. I let out a loud, hearty laugh as if it were the most hilarious thing I had ever seen. God, that's funny, Mum. I held it out for everyone to see while I spoke. My mom smiled as if she had just won an Oscar. And you still have that edgy sense of humor. Well, you were a surprise, Rita responded with a little smirk. And my uncle, I believe, grumbled and laughed. The type of chuckle that gets stuck in your throat and turns sour on the way down is apple doesn't fall far. My jaw ached from smiling so much. I put the onesie down after that. I entered the kitchen. I cleaned my hands. I decided after staring at the sink. People who cheered when I laughed at being insulted, who would definitely turn around and tell my child one day, and who found this type of behavior humorous were not people I wanted to raise my child around. Your mother was never meant to be born, aren't you? Not at all. I didn't say any of it, though. Not quite yet. Because that night something else happened, something that caught me off guard. I became aware of the extent of the rod at that point. He was only the punchline for them. I had always been the target of the real joke, which had been going on for 30 years. When I was insulted in front of friends and family, I did what any emotionally stable pregnant woman would do after taking a shower. When I got home, I sat on my wardrobe floor and sobbed until I felt like I had a migraine. Adam made an effort to console me. He did, but when your wife starts crying, what do you say? Will they treat our child the same way I was treated? He had nothing to say. And that was the issue. I had the answer already. See, this was not an isolated incident. It wasn't as though my mother had suddenly become a cruel person whose sense of humor was influenced by remarks made on TikTok. But since birth, this had been developing. Specifically, my birth, which seemed to be a huge hassle. The oops baby was me, a hospital blanket wrapped around the midlife crisis. Rita was born when my parents were in their 20s. Planned. Excellent. The child with the golden hue. Then, like an unpaid bill, I arrived without invitation. They also made sure I never forgot it. It was always as a child. You're lucky we kept you. Honestly, you ruined our empty nest plans. We didn't get to travel because of you. They'd say it with that casual cruelty. Like they were telling me what was for dinner. Rita, of course, never heard this. He was the one they chose. Which made me. What? An accident? A consequence? A monthly supervision? I used to persuade myself they loved me differently, that it wasn't worse, just less photogenic. But that deception was harder to hold up every time they forgot my birthday or skipped my high school graduation. Because Rita's ballet performance was on the same day and she worked so hard. Christine at our family, being the older sister didn't mean you were wiser, meant you were better. When I got my admission letter to a state institution, my mom congratulated me by saying, Rita got into Yale, but this is still excellent for you. I worked through college. Rita didn't. I wore bargain rack outfits to job interviews. Rita's closet looked like a Banana Republic showroom. And when I got engaged to Adam, my dad genuinely remarked, Are you sure you don't want to wait for someone with a little more ambition? Yeah, it was the family. Brutally truthful. It means emotionally reckless with zero accountability in a pleasant way. God bless Adam. He did his best. You're not them, he insisted again. You are not need to be them. And in theory, I thought so. However, every time I paid full price for something, I would hear my mother's words in my mind. Whenever I refused to assist with another debt, I heard her remark, Chrisette, stop being selfish, each time I made a self-centered decision. It was more than words. I felt like I owed them something just for being born because of them. Even when I began to accomplish well for myself, they managed to make me feel bad when I got promoted, when Adam and I finally paid off our vehicle, and when we bought a little house. You ought to assist your sister. She is working on critical projects, my dad continued. My mom would say Rita is doing international consulting. She also needs to take care of the baby. It's funny since I was the one who provided free weekend babysitting for that child. Rita was networking. When my dad's hours were reduced, I even donated money to help with my parents' mortgage. Thank you, but no. No, thank you very much. 2 weeks later, they sent a follow-up text requesting assistance with their power payment. Yes, I did giggle when I saw that onesie. Not because it was amusing, but more because it validated my lifelong suspicions. I wasn't considered a genuine person by them. With a debit card, I was the family's scapegoat, and now I was expecting my own child. I opened a blank document on my laptop while I sat in bed the night of the baby shower. I began to type a list. Not a list of things to do, not a plan for birth, a cue. I would no longer allow them to cross that line. And please stop making jokes about me. Not another unwelcome guest. No further financial assistance. Never access to the baby, unless I specifically state otherwise. No manipulation through Rita's back door. Adam turned and said, "What's that?" "Our new family policy," I said. And I slept for the first time in years. Naturally, though, they made things difficult. My mother texted me the morning after the baby was delivered. "Is she present then?" "No name? No." "Well done." I just didn't answer. Rita shared a childhood photo of me on Instagram a few hours later, writing, "I can't wait to meet my new niece wherever she is." Because it's a family art form, passive hostility. During that first week, my parents called, texted, and even sent a card to Adam in the hospital. The front was the only one to say, "Congratulations, Dad." A $20 Starbucks gift card and a sticky note that said, "Perhaps this will help. We're inside. I hope you soon get better employment." "I hope I'm kidding. This isn't about me," Adam murmured, glancing at me. "It's all about dominating you." He was correct. We made the decision to move at that point. They couldn't pop far enough to prevent somebody from unintentionally dropping in on the infant, but not far enough to be dangerous, just far enough for me to breathe. We kept it a secret. We did not provide them with our updated address. I answered my mother's question about when she could visit the baby. "When I'm ready, I'll let you know." She didn't ask again. 2 days later, Rita texted, "Whoa. Embracing the idea of cutting off contact with your family." I put her on the block list but didn't reply. I created a secret folder called Evidence that week. Within it, in case they ever attempted to paint me as the bad guy, I kept screenshots of the ones that either text readers upload. I needed receipts and documentation. Adam referred to it as my policy for emotional insurance. I referred to it as self-defense. Even still, there was a part of me that silently and foolishly hoped they would change their behavior, apologize, or even be softened by the baby. They didn't. They got more intense. And what took place? One thing became evident after 3 months. They wanted to see more than simply the baby. They want authority. Cutting someone off always seemed to me like slamming a door, out loud. Dramatic. Final. It's more surgical and quieter in real life, though, as when you sneak out of a burning building and shut the door behind you, knowing that no one inside will be harmed, but knowing that they will only pull you back into the flames. I didn't text a large family group. I did not compose a letter of passion. I simply quit. No more updates, no more texts, and no more cash. I had set up regular transfers to assist with my parents' mortgage, but I discreetly canceled them. That was a monthly loss of $600. For emergency daycare costs, which somehow always fell on her spa days, I stopped Venmo Rita. I took money out of the family's emergency reserve. 2 years ago, I foolishly consented, which essentially meant that the Christine pays for everything money was also gone. I didn't elaborate. I made no excuses. Because the moment you begin to describe things in such a way, people will take it and turn it into a point of contention. Naturally, the response was instantaneous. The passive-aggressive text appeared first. "As you can see, the mortgage was not approved. I hope all is okay." Interpretation. "Where is our money?" An ATM reader that is human. "Hello, your niece is in dire need of her medication this month. Could you please send your regular?" Her niece only existed when money was involved, which is funny. They intensified because I disregarded them. It began with the voicemail my mother left when she phoned. "I'm not sure what's wrong with you, but this attitude is unacceptable." And it ends with the statement, "Maybe you're not mature enough to be a parent if you think you can punish us with money." Because being mature involves paying your emotionally abusive parents to make fun of your life decisions and to disparage your unborn child. The guilt trip parade followed, and we were expecting you to do it. Your dad's blood pressure is elevated. This kind of stress may kill him. I worked hard all my life, Dad. Do I get this gratitude? Rita? Whoa. This is really harsh. But I knew that being a mother would alter you. It would also cost you nothing if Rita allowed mom and dad to meet the kid. I about lost it at that point. Therefore, she was correct. Leaving her in their grasp would have been simple. Take some pictures. For a moment, imagine if we were one of those happy families you see in classic films. Then, though, I recalled the onesie, my mother's arrogant grin, and how I used to giggle to keep from crying. What will happen when my daughter is old enough to get the humor, I wondered. What happens if people begin to make fun of her? Well, not once again. Thus, I just responded once. Rita and I. It would cost me more than you can ever imagine to let them get close to her. Walked. I then modified my phone number. Silently. Just for my close friends and family. No big reveal, just tranquility. I began sleeping through the night for the first time in my life. Not because the infant was asleep. She didn't at all. However, I wasn't anticipating emotional minefields each time my phone rang. However, when individuals like my parents don't get what they want, peace never lasts. Began with a post on Facebook. I hope my daughter likes this once. My mother wrote under a picture of me as a newborn. I can't even hold my granddaughter anymore. Then came the condolence messages from distant family members who hadn't communicated with me since 2007. After that, Rita gave a hazy anecdote about how some individuals punish their family for being athletic and how becoming a parent should make you gentler rather than colder. I remained silent. For the file I had created, I simply saved the post screenshots in a folder called In Case They Escalate. A few weeks later, I received a call from Adam's school, indicating that I would require it sooner than I had anticipated. Since Adam teaches first grade and had sobbed watching Finding Nemo, it seemed absurd that they had gotten an anonymous report suggesting he could be mentally ill and potentially harmful around children. It was taken seriously at the school. They had to, of course. An internal review was conducted. Adam had to meet with HR Principal A. Fortunately, his colleagues fully supported him, and the meeting ended without any issues. However, I was aware of who had called. I didn't have to prove it, but I couldn't. Vindictiveness like that has a hallmark. For years, my family had been signing it. As a party favor, I printed all of their messages, voicemails, old emails, social media postings, and any other piece of emotional manipulation they had ever given me that evening. I also gave a lawyer a call to inquire whether they appear not to file a lawsuit. How can I help? He gave me information on cease and desist orders, restraining orders, and how to keep records of everything. Then she made a statement that I still remember. You don't need to wait for your daughter to be harmed. Now you can keep her safe. So I did. I made touch with all of our relatives. To be honest, I only trusted a select few, and I informed them that my daughter would not communicate with Rita or my parents. Please honor our choice. The majority claimed to understand. Some resisted. But family is everything, one aunt added. I responded to it. Then I'm building a new one, which is fortunate. We went to a new creche across town, changed pediatricians, and had our names taken off of all the registries my mum could access, deleted old pictures, began anew. I was choosing peace above quiet and approbation for the first time in my life. Up until 3 months later, when a loud, panicked hammering on our front door disturbed the stillness, everything was perfect. Adam leaped. The infant shifted. Then someone outside said, "You and I need to chat, Christine." I froze when I peered out the window. My mother was who? Weeping, unkempt, and standing by her. A clipboard that collector is carrying in the hand of a man wearing a shabby suit. They weren't only begging, they were in a grave situation. I saw they weren't there to bring peace as I stood there in my peaceful house holding my kid. They were here to steal something. I wasn't going to give it up either. Just before anything cracks, there's a certain quietude. With my infant in one arm and my pulse racing, I stood at the top of the stairs while my mother continued to rap on the door. The man with the poor suit and remorse in his eyes next to her clipboard was obviously not a part of the reunion she had envisioned. Hugs are not given by debt collectors. Adam gave me a glance. Would you like me to? I gave a head shake. No, I've got this. I walked gently to the front door after giving him the baby. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. Through the glass screen, my mother could see my face. His tears became more intense. There's always a flair for drama in loud, theatrical cries. Just talk to me, please, Christine. We're having problems. We need your assistance. You cannot simply ignore us in this manner. Behind her, uncomfortably, the debt collector moved. Trying not to appear as though he intended to vanish, he held a stack of papers. With my arms crossed, I said loudly enough for them to both hear, "It's not a nice moment. You know you shouldn't be here, I believe." "We are family, though," she cried. "Don't treat us like this." And I felt it for the first time in my life. Not remorse. Don't be afraid. Clarity. You weren't harmed by me. Calmly, I said, "Did you?" I shut the blinds after that. From the other side of the door, I could hear her cry, but I didn't recoil. I refrained from crying. "Let's contact a lawyer," I said to Adam as I returned upstairs and kissed my baby's forehead. I didn't have to speculate about what might happen next. They will increase, I knew. My mother is one of those persons who doesn't reflect. They strike back. And exactly on time, Rita shared a video of herself that evening, her voice shaking with well-choreographed emotion and her face completely made up. After our parents committed one mistake, my sister severed their relationship. She is punishing them with her infant. Their finances are in ruins. Every day they weep. Please get in touch with her, if you know her, and let her know that she is superior than this. When I saw that, I burst into laughter. Better than what? That's right. Better than establishing limits. Better than turning a blind eye to mistreatment masquerading as custom. I didn't respond. I kept it to myself. Since I was no longer required to defend myself, I didn't attempt. My lawyer wrote an official stop and desist letter the next day, and not just to my mother, but also to my mom, warning that any further attempts to get in touch with me, Adam, or our daughter will be recorded and used as proof. I wasn't playing a bluff. The repercussions weren't either. They made every effort. Burner account emails, voicemails from unknown people. "Your child will resent you for keeping her away from her family," was the message left by an anonymous caller. Well done, Mum. But the portion that, in my opinion, truly clinched the deal. The falsehoods began to unravel. It turns out that after years of performance, someone ultimately forgets their lines. A relative made contact. Someone I hadn't spoken to for a long time. "Hey, I saw what Rita posted," he remarked. "However, I also recalled how you were treated as a child. I just wanted to let you know, their story doesn't seem credible to me." Other family members privately messaged me one by one. Some said they were sorry they didn't notice. Some acknowledged that they had always pondered the reason. I appeared quite uptight in front of my family. "I recall your mother telling you that you owed her for not obtaining an abortion," one aunt wrote. "I never forgot that. But I did. I had buried it deep." However, there was evidence. For years, they had been repeating the silent part aloud. So I took the unimaginable action. I was honest. I didn't record a video for the public. A clumsy call-out threat was not what I posted. I just gave a small group of my extended relatives a straightforward message. One joke won't lead me to cut off contact with my parents. Years of financial abuse, conditional love, and emotional manipulation have led me to cut them off. The final straw was the onesie. Voicemails, pictures, and screenshots were attached. Just the facts, no comments. What followed was a wonderful stillness. My parents were unfriended by certain individuals. My mom had written them a note stating that I had gone insane after giving birth and need professional assistance. Which one of my relatives shared to me? Now they were attempting to undermine me. Because people began to see the pattern, their final card failed. The desperation, the falsehoods. And I began to recognize my true family. The buddy who came all the way across town to sit on the porch and bring me coffee. "You're doing the right thing," the neighbor said in a handwritten message. The old colleague who sent me a baby blanket along with a letter that said, "Your child will grow up free. The best gift of all is that." 4 months had passed since the onesie. We relocated to 2 different towns. Bigger portion, smaller location. Once more, we switched pediatricians. A fresh chapter, a new creche, and a new phone number. The infant's sleep has improved somewhat. Adam chuckles even more. I grin without looking to see whether anyone is looking. I get depressed sometimes. I lament the version of myself that hoped they would change. Not because I miss them. Who thought I would be noticed at last if I offered enough money, time, and forgiveness? He made a great effort. And she's gone now, replaced by a more powerful individual, someone more subdued, someone who doesn't have any proof. To those who would never applaud her victory, the other day, I discovered the onesie tucked away in a drawer that I hadn't opened since our relocation. I looked at it for a while. I then placed it in an evidence-labeled box, closed it with tape, put it in a file, to remind myself not to cling to the hurt. Never again. I'm not sure if my parents will continue to try. Every time I see my daughter's large eyes, her frenzied laughter, and her tiny fingers around mine, I don't care. One thing is certain to me. She will never believe that love has a cost. Her ability to laugh through embarrassment will never develop. She will never have to win the love of those who hate her just for being. Me? I don't let you down. I'm a mom. And I've now understood what it is to defend something you genuinely care about. That's the tale. Not the story I ever thought I'd tell, but the one I had to experience in order to realize what love isn't. I'd be interested in knowing your opinions if you've ever had to make a decision like this, or ever considered it. Did I make the correct decision? Was I severe enough or too harsh? Tell me in the comments below. Please click the subscribe button if this story resonated with you, or if you simply want to hear more tales like it. Story 4. My sister's garden served as the venue for the birthday celebration. A contemporary farmhouse on the outskirts of Austin, with a long table covered in white lace and lights strung through each tree limb, seems like it belongs in a wedding magazine. Harper and Lily, my twin nieces, had recently celebrated their 8th birthday. Their costumes were similar, shimmering, pink, and sequined. They had fishtail braids in their hair and bows as large as their hands. I was surrounded by people I had not seen in a long time. For good cause, mostly. As we entered that packed garden, I clutched my daughter Ellie's hand. She had chosen a glittering blue headband that morning because it looked like a smiling star, and she had just turned 7. I could feel Ellie's small shoulders stiffen as we entered, since she was a shy person who was never quite comfortable in crowds. She also produced 2 homemade cards with pictures of suns and rainbows, and she had practiced saying happy birthday all the way there. I reminded myself that it was already a win to have the guts to come. In the middle of it all, I saw my sister Abigail smiling heartily while holding a sparkling champagne glass. She nodded slightly as our eyes locked, then turned away as if I were a cleaner who had arrived late. I got that tight-lipped grin from my mom. Don't make a scene, she would often advise. As though the chili cut in his hand were the most significant thing in the world, my dad didn't even glance up from his plate of sandwiches. The candle blowing was immediately followed by the distribution of gift bags. Every youngster that was called up received a tote bag made of glittering cloth with their names inscribed in sparkling script. I got a peek of the presents inside: bespoke water bottles with their initials, handcrafted bracelets, imported lollipops, and little plush animals. The happy squeals like a second Christmas. It was Ellie's time next. A little, crumpled white paper bag was given to my sister by an adult who was most likely one of her friends. There were no embellishments, only a black marker scrawl on the front of a crooked yellow sticky note. Next time, give it more effort. Ellie was there. Hold on. It must be a joke, she thought, looking at the bag as if she were attempting to misinterpret it. But there was no jovial laughing. Slowly, as though still expecting for something nice, she opened the bag. A dusty gray eraser, a stained mint, and a broken pencil. Nothing else? No explanation, no notes. She faced me. She squeezed my hand, her eyes gleaming. Without knowing what I was hearing, I was familiar with that sensation, that gut-level perplexity, that sense of having done something incorrectly. Abigail started giggling. When she believed she was being hilarious, she would laugh sharply. She claimed to have been a bit over the top lately, such as joking, sobbing, interfering, and being too sensitive to little details. It was only a polite reminder. My mother laughed as well. Really, Nancy, it's excellent for her. You spoil her too much. Like it was all a foolish play, my dad grumbled. They were making him sit through it. I glanced at Ellie below. She tried to grin. When children are struggling to contain their tears, they grin in a twisted manner. In the throng, nobody else appeared to notice. Even worse, they opted to chuckle despite noticing. My spouse, Jason, was standing next to me. Without uttering a word, he just removed the bag from Ellie's grasp and spoke in a steady, quiet voice. Let's go grab you something truly delicious. Taking Ellie's hands, we left the party in silence but with a goal. It was like folks walking out of a burning home. Nobody intervened. Nobody yelled. Abigail didn't even bother to look. And I realized that this was no longer a party. This was the last line and a warning. Ellie sat quietly in the back seat of the car on the way home, clutching the ripped white bag as if she was still processing what had happened. Jason's gaze met mine in the rearview mirror. Stormy yet calm, nobody said anything. At one point, even the vehicle radio had been switched off, creating an odd sort of quiet. The three of us were holding our breath, waiting for something to break when we arrived home, but it wasn't painful. Instead of running to her room like she always did, Ellie did not. Pulling off the glittery headband, she set the present bag on the table and crawled onto the couch, cuddling up behind the thin Thanksgiving blanket. Last year, Jason gave it to her. The two crayon-colored cards were still in her hand. Now, the stars she had sketched were smeared, as if they were blending together. Did I forget to express my gratitude? With hardly a breath in her voice, Ellie asked. The card is still in focus. My heart constricted. I sat next to her and touched her hand tenderly. It wasn't your fault, Ellie. The reason wasn't that you forgot anything. I took a moment to make sure my tone was forceful and clear. You have nothing to do with the fact that some individuals lose the ability to be nice. She gave a nod. Seldom. Then, as if it were a paper shield, she hugged the card to her chest. However, they might have loved it more if I had done a better job drawing it. I wanted to make a big statement that would improve the situation. You shouldn't have to work for that affection. However, I was unable to find the appropriate words. As though I could erase every thoughtless comment that had ever been directed at her heart, I just drew her into my arms and hugged her close. Jason entered with 2 mugs of hot tea after Ellie fell asleep in my arms. He sat thoughtfully across from me. He claimed that this had nothing to do with a paper bag. I gave a nod. I am aware. What is the current number of times? Without requiring a response, he inquired, Your mother claimed your pie was too salty when you brought it to Thanksgiving. When Ellie dressed strangely according to your sister, when she started making loud sounds, your father advised her to calm down instead. I let out a sigh. For Ellie, I used to hope that they would change. I believed that if I was polite and patient enough, people would eventually recognize her true self. Jason put down his cup. However, they don't. They have no desire to. Because they would have to acknowledge that their treatment of you was incorrect if they saw Ellie. I turned to see my daughter sleeping peacefully, holding her card as if it were a dream. She was unwilling to let go. I cannot allow this to occur once again. Jason nodded, but he didn't say anything. Not with consent, but with tacit consent, similar to a promise. I got up and made my way to my home office drawer, the one in which I stored transient items. Things the first once believed I would eventually deal with. When my sister texted me to ask me to watch the twins so she could take a week off from the stress, I paid my parents' utility bills. The promise to reimburse me for the storm-related roof repairs lingered in the air. I had printed it all out and placed it in a folder without a name. I silently opened the cover and took out a marker and a blank page. I wrote slowly and purposefully in order to document the truth rather than to threaten or punish. I taped the yellow sticky note, which was wrinkled, from Ellie's gift bag to the upper right corner. Next time, try harder with the words. It was still there, tilted like a smirk. When Jason entered, he saw me putting it on the folder's first page. He remained silent. He put a hand on my shoulder after that. We're not going back this time, shall we? That evening, I didn't squeeze his hand again. I didn't get any sleep. I listened to Ellie's steady breathing in the dark while I sat next to her bed. I recalled all the times I had kept quiet. I was constantly told that I was overreacting, too demanding, and too sensitive. I also swallowed it, hesitant to exacerbate the situation. However, this was no longer about me. Ellie was the subject of this. Ellie also merited a different start. I would begin organizing things tomorrow, my heart and the house. But tonight, I just sat there and whispered a promise while watching over her sound sleep. She will never be harmed again, not while my chest is still full of breath. I was always the one left out, as 3 witnesses attest to, and I grew up in a 4-bedroom home. My sister Abigail was the kind of child parents build their hopes on and repeat like a tired refrain. Straight A student, hair always neat, knew how to talk to adults, and never made a fuss. Every word, every move she made was met with warm smiles and gentle pats on the back. And me, the child who asked too many whys, got distracted easily and never quite learned how to please a crowd, was often left out of the frame. I remember back in third grade when my teacher chose me as the inspiration of the month for helping a classmate learn to read. I ran home with a certificate, still smelling of fresh ink. My mom picked it up, glanced at it, and said, "Your sister was chosen 3 months in a row, but congratulations." Then she turned back to finish her favorite TV drama. There was no cake, no text in the family group chat like the ones that always showed up whenever Abigail won a school debate competition. When I started drawing, though, I wasn't very good. I really loved it. My dad said, "You should do something more practical, like your sister studying finance. Art doesn't put food on the table." My sketches slowly ended up in my desk drawer collecting dust, and eventually even I forgot about them. I used to think I was just too sensitive. I blamed myself for feeling left out, for feeling compared. I tried to do everything right, kept my room clean, finished homework before dinner, never needed to be asked twice, but it was never enough. I was still the one stuck in the front seat whenever we went on family trips, because the better seats were for Abigail. She gets carsick easily. I was still the one who had to give up my favorite food. Because your sister really enjoys that dish, my feelings were never seen as valid when I cried after my best friend turned her back on me. My mom said, "What did you do to upset her?" Don't overcomplicate things. When I said I felt sad for no reason, she let out a sigh. Kids these days always think something's wrong just to get attention. No one ever asked why I was sad. They just wanted me to stop so they wouldn't be bothered. I grew up believing that love was something to be earned, that I was only worth caring about when I wasn't a burden. When I did everything right, and if I ever felt wounded, it was my fault for being too sensitive. It wasn't until college, when I finally got out of that suffocating environment, that I learned not all families are like that. I met Jason my senior year. He was the first person who actually listened without interrupting or blowing me off with worthless advice. The first time I sobbed because I missed home, even though I couldn't think of a single item I missed. He merely laid his hand on my back, saying nothing. He didn't have to. The first time Jason met my family, he kept silent during the whole dinner. Then, as we were in the car, he responded, "I understand it. I didn't have to explain the route." My mom questioned everything about Abigail's employment, but failed to ask what I did. The way my dad talked to Jason about his accomplished daughter without once looking in my direction, he saw everything. And then Ellie came along. Her appearance made me feel I could alter things. I wanted her to have what I never did, a complete family holiday gatherings, memories with grandparents, aunts, and uncles. I've forgiven my parents, my dad, Abigail, or at least tried to lay aside the hurt so Ellie wouldn't lose out. I disregarded the mocking remarks about my parenting, her fashion choices, and the fact that she disliked being touched. I dismissed the moments when Ellie gave me a wide-eyed look and said, "Mom, why does Grandma shake her head like that when I speak?" I kept telling myself that they would love Ellie, accept her, and change if I was gentle and patient enough. The present bag with the yellow message till that day. When I saw Abigail's joyful laugh and Ellie's tight grin, I knew I was mistaken. Ellie wasn't the beginning of the trend. I was the first to do it. And it wouldn't end with her if I didn't take action. It was more than simply a celebration. It was an exact replica of what I had experienced. This time, though, it went straight to my daughter's heart. When Ellie was 4, I began to notice something wasn't quite right. It started with seemingly innocuous comments, such as when she attended a classmate's birthday party wearing a purple dress with a star motif. It's not the appropriate attire for a little girl. When my mother saw the picture I uploaded, she stated bluntly, and Abigail texted with a sly smile, "Hopefully she is not interested in fashion." I typed it off with a giggle. Children swipe past it since they have their own style. I told myself that I was exaggerating. However, the minor remarks began to accumulate. During a holiday visit, Ellie once refused to give her grandfather a hug. Whispering, "I don't want to be touched," she withdrew her hand and huddled behind me. In front of everyone, my mother scowled and spoke aggressively. Today's youth are really impolite. Who will enjoy her behavior like that? Abigail started giggling. I suppose she inherits her mother's traits. Very sentimental and enjoys dominating others. I gently raised my voice and clarified that Ellie wanted her boundaries to be respected since she was sensitive to physical contact. My parents simply had a perplexed and agitated expression. Are you teaching her to disregard fundamental etiquette? My father spoke as though that were the whole truth. I made an effort to explain Ellie's reaction to loud noises and her need for time to get used to new individuals. Nobody paid attention to the fact that this was a part of her worldview. I was labeled anew each time I established a barrier to keep her safe. Overly cautious. A snowplow. At a Christmas event, Abigail placed a noisy toy directly in front of Ellie, making Mom too nervous. Ellie was shocked, covered her ears, and started crying when I explicitly begged not to bring her. Abigail shrugged and glanced at me without saying sorry. We refer to this as real-world training. There is no volume control in life. As I carried Ellie out of the living room, I felt her entire body tremble. Behind me, I heard my mom whisper, "Everything constantly makes her overreact." Now, how many times have I left that house with Ellie cradled in my arms and pressed to my chest? However, I recall the familiar sensation, like when I was summoned, difficult, too sentimental, unmanageable. It was my daughter now, though. I believed I was resilient enough to bear it. Why is it sufficient to keep the past and present apart? However, I was mistaken. Ellie is now experiencing a repetition of how they treated me. Same script, but a different name, very similar to me in the past. Ellie is beginning to learn how to get smaller, keep silent, hold off on speaking till the appropriate time. When Ellie was 6 years old, she brought home a watercolor picture one afternoon that included gentle spirals and a combination of blues and purples. "What did you paint?" I inquired. "I painted my sentiments since I don't know how to express them," she added. I went cold. In that response, I recognized myself. Once, a youngster had to illustrate her feelings as no one allowed her to express them verbally. I gave Abigail a call that evening. I made an effort to remain composed and stated that Ellie was being harmed by the taunting and that she should be respected. I received a dry laugh in response. "Are you serious? How are children going to make it through life if they can't take a few remarks? Quit transferring your emotions to your daughter." I ended the call. Jason was beside me. His voice was steady and low, yet I was still on his laptop. "How many times have they informed you that the issue is in your head?" I didn't respond. Ellie was on my mind. If I continued to allow her to be drawn into the loop, what type of person would she end up becoming? I anticipated the inquiry. Is it worth severing relationships and preventing your child from seeing her grandparents or other family members? I used to worry that Ellie would lose a member of her family if I did. But my vision is clearer than ever today. She is not forced to diminish herself to meet the demands of her family. She can be herself with her family without worrying about criticism or ridicule. And I won't hesitate to defend my daughter's wholeness of soul if it means maintaining harmony in a poisonous home. Despite not getting much sleep, I woke up earlier than usual the morning following the birthday celebration. The first rays of light streaked over the hardwood floor as they slipped through the window. As though to tell me that today would be different, it was peaceful and kind. It was because I was finishing, not because of what was coming. Jason had a cup of coffee while sitting in the kitchen. Even though his eyes were still hazy, he looked at the big brown folder I placed on the table and nodded as if he had been anticipating this moment for a while. "Where should we begin?" he inquired. I flipped through the pages of the folder after opening it. They were all memories I had brushed aside. I convinced myself it wasn't a big problem or tried to forget. Abigail texted me to ask if I could help pay for her auto repairs because my paychecks didn't go through this month. There were screenshots of those texts. An email from my mom last year regarding their utilities being shut off due to a billing error and asking me to cover for the 4th time in 2 years. In fact, even a bill with my name on the internet service at my parents' house, even though I moved out when I was still single, was followed by a brief thank you but no repayment. I also copied out passages from earlier diary entries about family get-togethers, in which Ellie was made fun of and I was reprimanded for failing to toughen her up. I divide them into categories on money, abusive language, emotional neglect, and harmful habits that recur. I then carefully labeled them and clipped each one. Last but not least, I adhered a yellow sticky note to the cover. No lengthy justification, only 3 words. That's sufficient. 3 copies were printed by Jason. One remained with us. Abigail would get one. I intended to send Aunt Margaret the final one, the only family member who ever let me into her heart. She told me once, silence can sometimes be interpreted as complicity. I knew she would comprehend. After I assisted with the majority of the down payment, Abigail moved to her neighborhood, a peaceful little suburb in Fort Worth, and I drove there that afternoon. I used to believe that supporting her would preserve our tenuous bond. I realized now that I had only widened a wound that would never go away. The bell was not rung by me. I just put the envelope right outside her door, then took a few steps back. Jason sat in the vehicle. I took one final glance at the home, potted plants on the porch. At one point, I gave her the SUV that I had assisted with the deposit on, and she recognized it all for what it was, a shabby stage show. By the time I checked my phone that night, I had finally figured out how to leave. Abigail had missed 17 calls. I didn't respond to any of them. My mother had left a message. "What are you doing? Do you intend to destroy everything?" I didn't answer. I merely opened my email, sent it to all of my relatives on my contact list, and attached the scanned PDF of the file. Everyone who has ever inquired as to why I no longer attend family gatherings, it was a straightforward topic line. In case you were wondering why I didn't show up the next morning, Uncle Louie in Kansas responded, "You have a lot of courage, yet this is difficult. I hope Ellie lives in a more equitable society." One line came from a relative in Oregon. "I'm proud of you. I didn't want people to take sides. All I wanted was for the truth to be known." Jason terminated all of the accounts that we had been covertly maintaining for my family throughout the years. Abigail previously requested us to cover a few months' worth of expenses, including phone bills, insurance premiums, and college assistance for her oldest kid. It was all over in a single afternoon. No justifications. "I'm not sorry." A knock on the door came 3 days later. Through the peephole, I peered. My mom was the one. Even though her eyes were red, she still had the same expression that made me feel 10 years old all over again. Part accusation, part pleading. The door was not opened by me. Jason was standing next to me, his hand lightly resting on my shoulder. There was nothing for him to say. A piece of paper that my mother placed in the mailbox. I took it open. The front of the card said, "Thinking of you." Within, in her penmanship, "Family is where we are able to forgive one another. Don't allow little matters to ruin familial bonds." From the folder I had prepared the day before, I stealthily removed the yellow sticky note and scribbled a new line beneath the words. That's sufficient. When it persists for years, it is not a minor matter. After adhering it to the card, I put it back in the mailbox for pickup. I slept well that night for the first time in years. No doubts, no dreams, or just silence. Finally, in that silence, I heard something that, as a youngster, I had never been permitted to hear. My own voice was clear and unflinching. I distributed the file to the entire family, but it wasn't even 24 hours later. A frantic symphony of buzzing began to fill my phone. Abigail sent the initial message. "Don't say hello, just all capitals." "What are you doing, in your opinion?" A series of lengthy texts that included denial, guilt-tripping, and subliminal threats followed. It was only a joke. Why do you want me to be the bad guy? This family was just ruined by you because of one stupid gift bag. If you continue, I'll get an attorney. My folks then sent me texts. My father's was short, only a single line. "That's sufficient. Nancy." My mother's was more emotional and lengthier, but it lacked the one thing I had been longing for. "I apologize." She included a handwritten message in the subject line of an email she sent. "Give the past some space." Ellie was sleeping on the couch, nestled under a blanket, clutching her beloved teddy bear when I opened the envelope. The home was so silent that it seemed to be holding its breath with me as Jason worked in the backyard. Cream-colored stationery with flowery borders was used to write my mother's letter. She still writes neatly and precisely, similar to how she used to mark my first grade assignments. However, the information seemed too familiar, an ancient song with somewhat updated lyrics. Family is the only thing to turn to when all else fails, even if it's never perfect. The most precious connection you will ever have is being severed. You cannot continue to harbor little grievances from the past. Consider Ellie. She needs her cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents. In Masquerade of Love, the last phrase ended with a warning. Ellie will accuse you of stealing her family if you don't return one day. When I opened the letter, I'm not sure what I was expecting. Perhaps a recognition, a moment of conscience, a moment of candor. However, I just received the same echo that I had been hearing for years, one in which every transgression was sugar-coated and referred to as family. I took a seat and took out a black marker and a blank piece of paper from the drawer. No lengthy speech. I just wrote. I also missed my family in the past. I shipped it back after folding it and putting it in the previous envelope. No explanation, no signature. I learned a few days later that Abigail had made a lengthy Facebook post criticizing a family member who, in a fit of pride, publicly discussed personal issues to harm someone's reputation. Support was abundant in the comments, primarily from her close pals. Some even tagged me with statements like, "You can learn to forgive, but you can't choose your family." A small misunderstanding in the end shouldn't cause sisters to turn against one another. I remained silent, but a few hours later, I received a private message from a Minnesota relative I hadn't spoken to in years. If the information you entered in that file is accurate, it's not only an apology she owes you. I'm not sure how widespread this will be, but I do know one thing for certain. I didn't feel guilty about defending myself for the first time in my life. Ellie came running in from the backyard one late Saturday afternoon while I was in the kitchen arranging flowers. Untidy, muddy-haired hands with gleaming eyes. She yelled. Zoe and I used towels to construct a whole tent. Do you want to see? I put down the scissors, grinned, and nodded. I'm always interested in what you make. As we entered the yard, I recalled a story my mother had told me when I was a child and had received a poor arithmetic grade. Keep your weaknesses hidden from others. It will be used against you. However, I've discovered something new. You can defend yourself when you are aware of your weak points. More significantly, I use the unwavering love I never experienced to teach Ellie that every day. Ellie started to change in a way I couldn't quite put my finger on, but I could sense it strongly as summer gave way to the early autumn winds. She continued to laugh. Light, unburdened laughs, not the kind that aims for approval. As if she could breathe in a place that was hers at last. Lena and Joy, two local girls who also enjoyed finger painting and exchanged friendship bracelets weekly, were the new friends she made in her Tuesday afternoon art class. As Joy fastened a green yarn bracelet to Ellie's wrist, I silently observed from a distance. Her eyes glowed as if she had just received a medal. Nobody there told her she needed to get tougher or that she was too sensitive. Furthermore, I was aware that she was growing up in a safer environment than mine. The old nightlight was replaced with warm, gentle light from paper lanterns that we hung throughout Ellie's room. Would make a child's nerves weak, my mother used to say. I let Ellie choose the new bedding, which has watercolor-like pastel swirls, because according to her, it resembles the sky after rain. For the first time in years, I put a picture of Jason, Ellie, and I in the middle of the new bookcase I got for the living room. No more photos of Abigail or my parents. I had let go, not because I was angry. Ellie and I read books together at night. She reads to me on certain evenings, fumbling yet confident. On certain evenings, she questioned me directly. Have you ever felt afraid, Mom? When grown-ups make mistakes, why don't they apologize? I stopped avoiding. I was honest with her, even if it was only a silent yes and a nod. I'm not as afraid as I once was. My phone rang one Saturday afternoon as I was cleaning the kitchen counter. There was Abigail on the screen. Just 6 words later, a text message appeared that was colder and shorter than any lengthy conversation. But I had no intention of responding. Are you content now? You prevailed. The message was read 3 times by me. I was trying to see whether I felt anything, not because I didn't understand. Was it painful? Was I upset? Was I happy? I didn't win, thus I felt absolutely nothing. There was never a contest here. Neither a winner nor a loser emerged. I was alone. A mother who at last fulfilled a childhood desire of mine of having someone do it for me. Protect, step in, and don't turn around. I secured the screen. Didn't respond. Ellie came into the kitchen with a fresh sketch that night. 3 stick figures, a bearded one, a happy youngster on the roof, and a little home with a rainbow garden surrounding it were seen holding hands in front of the house. She had created a piece that allowed me to be myself. Next to the scrawled work notes and weekly menu plan, I pinned it on the refrigerator. To me, it was a miracle, yet it was an everyday event. A few weeks later, Ellie received an invitation to speak at the family day at her school, when each student chose a loved one to sit next to them while they read a piece they had written. I was her choice. Her writing consisted of just 3 phrases. I'm liked and trusted at home. My home is with my mom, and I feel secure there. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't help but cry. From release, not from agony. When Jason took us out for ice cream that evening, Ellie asked her mother whether she would be upset if Aunt Abigail texted her again. I brushed her hair with a grin. No, I won't be angry, but I also don't have to respond because sometimes the best course of action is to remain silent and continue to live our lives normally. I want to live well too, Ellie said in a murmur after nodding, similar to you. In the peaceful serenity of the automobile going into the night, I turned to face Jason and saw his gentle grin, the type of look that comes from someone who knows deep down that we made the right decision. I knew I didn't need anyone's approval. I already had the most convincing evidence that Nancy was correct, so I didn't need anybody else to confirm it. A youngster raised in a loving, safe, and trusting environment. I sat by myself in my home office that night after Ellie had gone to sleep. Old sticky notes were illuminated by the gentle golden light from my desk lamp. Parent-teacher conferences, therapy appointments, and calendar pages with red circles on them. The day of the birthday celebration that will never be forgotten. We had moved on from it all. Ellie and I had settled into a calm life that was measured in little increments. The gentle murmur of water from the small fish tank, and her laughing as she baked cookies in the kitchen. Even at the quietest times, like this one, something still found its way in, even if Jason had just set up the cozy shimmer of paper lanterns every night. A quiet shadow of a question. Did I make the correct decision? Cutting up contact with my own family was perhaps the most difficult thing I have ever had to do. On other evenings, I lay awake because I was hurting, not because I regretted it. I questioned if I should have appealed, sobbed in front of them, or provided additional details. Would they have been different? At the party, should I have responded more forcefully, shouted it out in public, defended Ellie by taking a strong public stance, or was it a silent retreat? The most powerful action I could have taken? I didn't say anything. I had endured enough pointless debates, not because I was weak. When I wanted my daughter to live in peace for the rest of her life, I didn't need to win a little battle. I occasionally reflect on my mother, the things she never said, and how she advised me to keep things simple. Are you okay instead of asking? Even when his eyes darted in response to Abigail's teasing at dinner, I see my father remaining silent and never intervening, despite knowing he remained silent. That is not the kind of world I want Ellie to grow up in. A society where expressing feelings is viewed as excessive and quiet is valued for tranquility. Some families aren't designed to be kept, according to what I once read. They must be released. And when I watch Ellie laughing without seeking permission, drawing without shuddering, and making friends without looking down, it hasn't been easy, even though I know I wasn't mistaken. Doubt still occurs occasionally. Dreams of family meals where Abigail doesn't make fun of me still wake me up. My father grabs my hand and apologizes when my mother really inquires about how I'm doing. Dreams so vivid that I forget they never happened, and perhaps never will for a few seconds after waking up. I gaze out the window at the trees waving shadows in the dim street light. I imagine that every mother in the world has the same query. I've waited. Is speaking enough the correct thing to do? I don't know the answer, but I'm breaking free from the family label excuse cycle. I am unable to pick for you. However, I can say this. I used to be a neglected child who was molded by the expectations of others and made to be quiet, kind, and understanding. And I carried that with me throughout my early years. Although I cannot alter my history, I can alter Ellie's course in life. Therefore, I would want to ask whether you are reading this, have experienced something similar, or are balancing family tradition with your own or your child's mental stability. If your kid were involved, would you follow my example? If you were afraid of being called ungrateful, would you stay? Or would you leave to raise a new generation that didn't have to endure? Would you want to be silent or to interrupt the cycle with a letter or a scream? Or just a single stride forward without turning around? I don't have the ideal solution, but I do have Ellie, a kid who is growing up without having to hide her tears, without trying to earn affection, and without worrying about being called too often. And it's sufficient for me to know that I'm headed in the correct direction. How about you? There is more to my tale than a party, a bag of presents, or a few unpleasant remarks. It concerns the valiant effort to break a generational cycle of suffering and silence. In order to create a home that was genuinely secure for my daughter, I made the decision to leave behind biological ties that no longer supported us. I may not have won in the perspective of others, but I made the decision that felt right to me, because keeping the entire family together does not lead to happiness. It results from safeguarding your child's tranquility, which is what really counts. How do you feel about the decision I made in this story? How would you safeguard your child if it were up to you? Leave a comment with your ideas. For more genuine, touching tales about family, remember to subscribe